The last dungeon with monsters was successfully cleared by a team of heroes elected for this mission. The dungeon began to gradually collapse, so one of the chosen heroes called everyone to the exit from it. He called everyone to a continuous movement without stops, otherwise they will die and their mission will be useless. From the gradually collapsing dungeon began to run out and crawl out the demons who wanted to kill the heroes. The heroes fled and looked around, slowly realizing that their number surpasses them, and they could not escape from the crowd of demons. Suddenly, one of the heroes stopped the escape, turned towards the demons and blocked his comrades. His comrades also stopped and tried to dissuade him from self-sacrifice, but he was unshakable. Turning to them, he gave the last smile of each of his comrades and said his last words. Without thinking twice, he asked those who survive after this dangerous mission to write his biography as a hero who sacrificed himself. Before this mission, people lived in peace and tranquility, not realizing that they were not the only ones in this world. They coexisted peacefully with each other, not even suspecting the terrible neighbors that they lived among them. Faced with a shoulder with an unfamiliar figure in a cloak, a random guy from the street was in shock that someone was knocking him so. Turning to the one who knocked him down, he immediately began to run into the man who had shot down him and demand an apology. Not finishing to speak, he fell into a stupor from a terrible creature who was not a man who was seen. It was a demon, a representative of the race that lives underground, and they had nothing to do with what was on the surface. At one point, they were tired of living locked up, and they began to get out to the surface to install their dictatorship there. At first, people tried to escape and take their feet away in horror, but they were everywhere and merciless. Unable to contrast something, humanity turned out to be as close to destruction as it had never been. Humanity tried to fight back, but no firearms and equipment worked against demons. The reason for this was that demons possessed an art that previously not known to humanity: magic. It was thanks to such a skill as magic that the demons managed to remain intact and unharmed, and they repelled any attack of people. However, this could not continue forever, and soon the same ability to appear in people too, allowing to apply reciprocal attacks. It was those whom the unknown power endowed with magic that became superhumans, whose possibilities were outside the human borders. Having gained such incredible and unknown to people earlier skills, superhumans were able to unite and discourage the attack of demons. The demons lived in the dungeons which the supernomers gradually cleaned one after another, not giving demons of hope of salvation. And finally, at one point, only the last dungeon remained, and humanity will win. It was then, in the spring of 2005, the 7 strongest superhumans gathered to put the end of the tyranny of demons. They went down to the main lair of demons, the last dungeon of the gate, and cleaned it from all the demons that lived there. They put an end to the continuous war of people with demons and saved humanity, for which people called the 7 Saviors. After the victory over the demons and the cleansing of the gate, the 7 Saviors gained great wealth and glory and became celebrities. But also in the war there is no loss, and this reminds that one of the 7 Savior has never returned from the battlefield. It was the leader of the 7 Savior, William, the only one who did not return and could not enjoy rewards and glory. At a time when all survivors after the cleansing of the last dungeons became celebrities and bathed in wealth and glory, William, thanks to which this war was successfully finished, became a legend, and a huge monument was erected in his honor. 17 years after the 7 Saviors ended the war, a sports match was held between France and South Korea. The France team attacked, but for unknown reasons the team of South Korea could not hold a blow. Mike was the main favorite in this match. He played for the France team, looked beautiful and played great. His skills made it possible to perform such things on the field that he carried the team of South Korea to fluff in their own territory. He was such an incredible player that I could alone pick up 6 murders in a row that commentators noticed. Commentators torn from what they saw and were perplexed from the fact that the International League never visible such a player. They also noticed that if he will continue to play at this level and higher, he risks the 3 of the best players in history. Of all the players of the South Korean team, only Marie survived, a skilled player with a whip, whose skills were also on top. Due to the fact that her whole team was literally dry, she had very little chance of victory, but she is not one of those who just give up. Without hesitation for a second, she confidently went on the offensive on Mike, using her proprietary lash as a weapon. Closing closer, she delivered an accurate blow to the chest in the chest, after which a grave silence reigned in the stands from the expectation of the result. Since she was the daughter of one of the 7 Saviors, everyone had high hopes on her, but she missed. Mike deftly dodged her blow, starting a quick movement behind her, which put her in a disadvantage. He noticed that she was a strong player, but her team dragged her down, after which he delivered her a final blow and finished the game. The commentators were delighted that Mike was so strong that the whole team was not enough to stop him. Spectators sat in complete disappointment and were perplexed that there used to be a lot of talented superhumans in Korea, but they lost this way. The head coach of the team of South Korea also recalled how they successfully smashed the demons, but now they are not the same. It was a complete shame for him for the nation, which made 2 of the 7 saviors of humanity. The commentators confidently agreed that the French were very good, but because of the defeat of Korea, their people are now not easy. The social networks were already torn by angry and disappointed messages about how such a great nation could lose with such a bang. Disappointment was already ending in the stands, and anger and rage began to appear due to the fact that they failed at an international match. Mason is one of the 7 savior, as well as the head coach of the Korea team, was disappointed in himself and the 3rd failure in a row. Mike and the audience were right. Marie was really a very strong player with great potential, but the team pulled her down. Yes, indeed, they used to say about Korean superhumans that they were the most powerful and hardy. But all this remained in the past. Mason walked along the corridor and could not drive his team out of his head, repeating in his head that everyone who knows at least something went abroad. For a second, he also remembered the 2nd Superman from Korea, the deceased William, and summed up that not only left, but also died. After a little more walking along the corridor and going to the coaching, he stopped in front of the photograph of the 7 saviors and began to intently examine it. He greeted William that he was depicted next to him, and sadly added that it was very sorry that he was not there now. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door and the guy leaned out because of her, telling Mason that everything was ready for an interview with him. Turning to him, Mason did not honor him with an answer, but only said nothing, sighed a couple of times and continued to soak in the clouds. After standing a little more, he began to go to the exit of the room, saying aloud that he needed to bring public apologies. He also added that under his coaching the team is going through the worst time, and he needs to leave the coach. The guy tried to dissuade him, but Mason was adamant, and only once again said that he would report his departure in an interview. He also added that if he can change something, it is if William returns from the other world, and he better quit the team for reputation. While the guy was trying to convince him, Mason in his thoughts involuntarily rejoiced that he would finally quit this position. Suddenly, in the front pocket of his jacket, the phone rang, and this sound pulled him out of the deep thoughts into which he was immersed. When he removed the phone from his jacket pocket, he was very surprised, since the president of the association called him. Picked up the phone, he heard the voice of the president, who did not even greet him, but immediately asked if he watched the news. With a sighing with displeasure, Mason said that he was aware that the head coach humiliated the whole country, as he is him. Mason was simultaneously surprised and dissatisfied with the fact that the president interrupted him, saying that he was trying to say not about that at all. After listening to the president's message carefully, he fell into a stupor from what he heard and asked the president to repeat again. In the very place of the city where the monument was erected by the deceased hero from the 7 saviors, lightning struck in the sky. Something fell from the sky right near the monument, creating dust clouds, which people began to look around in fright. Gradually, in the center of the city, a huge crowd began to gather at the foot of the monument to the hero of the war with demons. All of them stared at the body of a man who fell from heaven, the Superman who died 17 years ago and the hero of the war, William. Mason continued to stand in a stupor, removing the phone from his ear, from which the director's indignant cries came. At first, an incomprehensible flash of lightning, then a fall. This could all mean only one thing. William returned alive from the other world. William was surrounded by monsters, locked from the outside world, and nothing else was left but to stand to the last. The demons attacked him in front, from the sides, from the back, and it was never possible to guess which side they attack him next time. There were thousands, hundreds, millions of them, and they all crawled on the ground, soared in the air, but they had something in common. They all wanted to kill William. Despite the fact that William was exhausted and alone, he did not give up, but only confidently grabbed his sword stuck in the ground after the blow. The demons who were preparing for the next attack looked angrily at him, waiting for the next moment to attack. William chopped demons without mercy and fatigue until he could say with confidence that the gates in the dungeon were sealed. Having sealed the gate, he sank into one knee with fatigue, leaning against the sword, and the remnants of the demons immediately attacked him. William rose and again took his weapon in his hands, blocked the road to the demons to the exit from the dungeon. Already swinging his sword, he understood that they were unlikely to end to his death. but clearly understood that he would be fighting to the end. Suddenly, William abruptly opened his eyes and rose on the bed, trying to balance the rhythm of his breath and slow down the knock of his heart. Slowly realizing that he was not in the dungeon, he began to ask himself the following question. Where is he then? Suddenly, his attention was attracted by the voice of a nurse who entered the ward and was pleasantly surprised that he woke up. Having looked at her angrily, William missed all the enthusiastic phrases passed and demanded an answer to the question of where he was now. I ignored his question. The nurse asked about how his well-being, and then replied that he was now in the hospital, which was very obvious. William could not connect events in his head. A minute ago, he was locked in a dungeon, and now he is in the hospital. A scream involuntarily broke out of him when he heard that it was not 2005 on the street now, but 2022, which was why he was in a slight shock. The nurse tried to calm him down, but she herself did not fully understand how to correctly explain to him what was happening. Suddenly, a brilliant solution occurred to her, and grabbing the remote control that lay near her, she turned on the television channel on the TV. Showing the screen, she tried to somehow explain what was happening from the outside, based on the news release there. On TV, the news was transmitted that the Superman who disappeared 17 years ago returned and is currently in the hospital. The host also clarified that according to the information received from witnesses, William fell just at the foot of his own statue. Another mentioned detail was that he was in his armor at the time of the fall, and over the 17 years, not a drop changed externally. The result was the opinion of experts, which was that the reason for the return of William was a temporary anomaly. Still sitting in bewilderment, William could not believe that he had been going on from his campaign in the dungeon for 17 years. The nurse once again confirmed that everything said on TV is true. Otherwise, there would be no horror outside the windows of the hospital. Looking out the window, William saw crowds of cars and journalists, who literally guarded him, waiting for the moment he left. An evil grimace immediately appeared on his face from the realization that over the years, everything is changing except journalists. Having discarded these unpleasant thoughts, he turned to the nurse that stood nearby for help and asked him to bring him a mirror. After a couple of minutes, she found and brought him a mirror, looking at which he became convinced that he had not matured a drop during this time. Thinking that he certainly cannot be so young at 47 years old, he also came to the conclusion that it could be a temporary anomaly. Suddenly, an insight came into his head, and he frantically turned to the nurse with the question of what was done with his money. The answer sounded instantly, as if in advance prepared. All his monetary condition was donated to the support fund. From his house, due to the fact that it was the house of the deceased celebrity, they made a museum, and now it is a public place, not his house. Hoping at least for something, he still asked what was done with his car, but she also managed to sell her at a charity auction. Sitting in a stupor, William stubbornly tried to come to terms with the fact that in this world he was a hero. But in fact, from the realization that he was homeless, he bent up and said that if he knew about this situation, he would have set aside some money. The nurse again tried to reassure him. After all, he is a hero, so he was not destined to stay in poverty, and he has friends. She also added that his friend should come soon and she needs to leave, so if he needs something, then it will be necessary to click on the call button. As soon as the nurse left the ward, anxious thoughts again covered William, not giving absolutely no rest. Yes, everything was different outside the window, and the news and other factors proved that the future was the future, but he still could not believe it. Having thought about everything, he came to the conclusion that he would ask Mason about everything, and now he needs to conduct introspection. Slightly straining, he applied his ability Analyzing Gaze, after which his eyes began to glow. William's ability, Analyzing View, made it possible to visualize and analyze the abilities and talents of living creatures. The main advantage of this ability was not only that it did an analysis of skills and talents in the present time. She also allowed to see the potential of the chosen being and analyze his skills and talents in the future. It was thanks to this ability that William got the opportunity to develop much faster than the superhumans surrounding him. Soon, thanks to his incredible skills and this ability, the glory about him scattered around the world, and he became the commander of the stripping group. And because of his ability, he saw the potential in Mason, who asked for his disciples, for William was a very strong Superman. Having analyzed his skills, William realized that in fact, Mason was not a loser, but a talented Superman with just huge potential. Once again, looking at his skills, talents, and potential, William was convinced that he had this ability not to have this ability and agreed to take Mason. Sitting in the hospital and considering his indicators, William at first did not notice anything strange. Everything remained the same as it was. However, at one point, one line, which stood out among the rest, attracted his attention. The willpower with a value of 110. He was in shock because he remembered that the willpower is such a parameter that could not be raised above than 100 units and then 110. He also noticed a new ability that he did not have before, looking at which he saw its name: immortality. He sat in even greater bewilderment, considering a new ability, since he had not noticed it before. William thought a little more and put forward the theory that such an incredible ability was given to him for that battle in the dungeon. From his thoughts, sharply distracted the noise in the corridor and voice, and after some time, a knock on the door, so they came for sure to him. In the first glance, a man was an unfamiliar person in the opening, but the more he peered into him, the more familiar to the devil he noticed. Realizing who he sees in front of him, he still could not fully believe that Mason, his old friend, could change so much. Mason, in turn, looked at him with a mixed sense of joy and surprise, from which he almost pierced his tears. As a result, having accepted the fact that his old friend William is really alive and sound, Mason still burst into tears, looking at him with joy. William grinned in response and even laughed slightly, noting that over the years, Mason became very sentimental, as for a Superman. Getting a handkerchief from his jacket and wiping his tears, Mason smiled joyfully in his mouth, saying that it was possible to cry because peacetime in the yard. They dressed and went out onto the roof despite the fact that it was already dark, because everyone lit the lanterns of the luminous city and continued to stand, drinking coffee. William pricked Mason with the question of whether he finished crying, and he only replied that over the years there are more and more tears in you than before. Picking up a cheerful mood, William threw back the phrase that he was far from the realization of this phrase because he was still young. He also asked Mason about whether he had fulfilled his promise, in response to what Mason asked in surprise about what promise we were talking about. Grinning back, William reminded Mason of his promise to write his biography when they leave the dungeon where they fought. Mason replied that specially for this, he hired Gostos the writer, the famous writer Fantasy Romaniacs, and a very solid monastery was obtained. He also added that in addition to the biography, documentary, and feature films were shot, and everything looks like mythology there. Suddenly, sad thoughts again covered William, and he again began to worry about what to do now. Standing on the roof, he sorted out the information about the current world in his head, still surprised at how much new is here. Having decided to diffuse the tense environment and break the silence, he decided to make fun of himself that he was a hero, but a homeless person and unemployed. Putting his hand on his shoulder, Mason assured him that he had him one way or another, his friend who would help him in any trouble. William was surprised at how much Mason grew up while he was gone, and asked how he had money. Mason replied that he had money from raids, as well as a prize, and he naturally made some investments in his future. William was at a loss from the fact that business still did not fall apart, taking into account the fact that the head was at the head as Mason. Mason grinned nervously, cringed, and admitted that he had entrusted the whole thing to a professional because of his own inability. In response to this, William was delighted and poked Mason to the side, saying that they were both unemployed, and for some reason, this fact was very pleasing to him. Having a little hesitation, Mason uncertainly said that he had another job, which was very surprised by William, and he asked what kind of work it was. Judging by the appearance of Mason, he regretted that he had said this, so he was silent for a long time. But as a result, he still quietly replied that he was working as a national papernaia coach. William asked him, because due to a very quiet answer and the noise of the street, nothing was heard at all. But Mason was digging on his phone. A little more rummaging on the phone, he handed it to William, and he saw on the screen the sign, Final of the European Eyeing Championship. William carefully examined the flickering pictures on the screen, and with every second to watch, he had more and more questions. He noticed that dangers cleared by them 17 years ago were shown here, and he was at a loss, as he thought they were destroyed. Mason explained that this is a virtual reality, the Battle of Superhumans, where the dungeons are an arena of the battle, but his surprise still remained. He also explained to him that this is a kind of business that was always afloat, but after their victory gained frenzied popularity. In the expression on William's face, it was clear that he was slightly disappointed, and he added that, in his opinion, this is just childishness. In turn, Mason tried to convince William, saying that high-class players are comparable to 7 saviors by force. From the passion of the game process, William began to gnaw at the tube without taking his eyes off the game, spreading the standard, understandable, in response to the Mason phrase. Continuing to watch the match, he finally asked the most obvious in this situation, But the most unwanted to Mason the question of where Korea was where. Without waiting for an answer, William turned his head in displeasure to Mason, asking him about the state of his hearing, and repeated his question. Without waiting for an answer for the second time, he asked his question again. And he also saw a garbage at the other end of the roof and decided to try to get into it. William also noted that despite the small population, they had a lot of talented superhumans, so they are definitely not the last. Nervously swallowing after this phrase and a little stir, Mason uncertainly told the truth that he did not want to voice him for a long time. After Mason said that South Korea was the last, William's hand fluttered, and he missed a glass past the trash. He continued to stand as if dug, trying to understand whether Mason said just a joke, or is it really true. After standing for some time, William gathered his thoughts and turned to Mason with a mixture of surprise and indignation on his face. For some time they stood on the roof and then went down, got into Mason's car and drove along the night street. Mason tried to justify with abstruse thoughts why Korea loses to everyone, and William only grunted displeasedly. Mason uttered a few more morals and ended his fact that this is why their country is the weakest in this sport. William was slightly indignant at the stupidity of these words, but looked out the window under Mason's speech that the authorities considered the Koreans too dangerous. And this was the reason. Mason continued to say that because of his own fear, the authorities limited the capabilities of the Koreans, and even him. This time, William agreed with Mason and noted that even in his time, the strongest super entities left abroad. Mason only nervously grinned in response, and William added that it would be worth breaking their kneecaps at the time when it began. Mason also noted that William at that time watered the president and politician with a very large amount of dirt, so their actions are natural. He continued that he led this to the initial topic of the conversation. It was because of these riots that they cut their wings and the level of players fell. Mason decided on the proposal of William. He had already begun to speak the phrase, but he in turn cut it off with a refusal, not allowing 3 words to say. Mason was indignant that William did not want to go to the sport, but he just wants to sit down and sitting in one place. William, in turn, was indignant and said that he did not want to live more like a Superman and left everything in that cave, but wants to live like a person. He also added that he is clearly not the person who will fight for others, so he refuses about this sport. Remembering the childhood, William talks about how he fought for survival and respect in the place where he was brought up after receiving the super hell. He decided to end his small monologue with the thought that at this time he wants to live for himself. And this is not bad. Suddenly, he remembered another detail and reminded Mason that the journalist did not give him a passage. And if he went to sports? Mason decided to joke and asked if he was forced to play his blood thoughts about the battles, for which William only laughed. Mason turned away, leaned back in his chair, and again began to look at the road, saying that he was actually while postponing thoughts about sports. Suddenly, William violated the silence with a statement that the Korean supernomers are not so losers as the media, and Mason described them. In response to Mason's questioning look, he pointed to an advertising shield outside the window, on which a girl with a good figure was depicted. He noticed that she had a pretty figure and eyes, and she is very pretty in itself, so everything is in order with supermen. Mason sighed heavily and told William that he was talking about his daughter now, in response to which William choked on surprise. William stated that she had recently been 6 years old, to which Mason reminded him that 17 years had passed, and she was now 23. William tried to defuse the situation, trying to beat his words as a joke, making his daughter clumsy compliments. Mason cut him off, stopping the horror that came from his mouth, asking William to at least be silent, after which he apologized. In such silence, they continued to drive along the night street, and purple lights were lit by the road, creating a pleasant atmosphere. After some time, they drove up to a large and solid house, and when they stopped near the gate, the navigator informed them that they had arrived. An adult girl came out of the house, but she had such a joy on her face from William that it seemed to her about 20. Without removing a smile from her face, she said that she was very glad to see William, since she had not seen him for a very long time. And it's nice to see the deceased alive? William said that in turn he saw her a week ago, and in response she answered him that she managed to get very old for this week. Turning to Mason, she said thanks to him for visiting William and brought him to them, but he replied that this was the lesser that he could do. Looking at their happy faces and listening to their spiritual conversations, William really realized that he had returned to life. He returned to life, to that life, in the being of which there was no struggle for survival and wars, but only calmness and serenity. Having talked a little more, they went into the house where they changed William in normal clothes, gave food, and he sat down behind the telly. Suddenly, he jumped on the sofa from the shock as they began to transfer the very drama that he did not have time to watch before his death. He bent in half with happiness, and emotions overwhelmed him. He realized that it was for the sake of this moment that it was worth returning to life. It was for the sake of this moment that he threw back death from himself, and it was for the sake of such moments that it was worth living. That was his opinion. William stuck in chips, lay down on the sofa, and only did that. He joyfully said that he would stare at the telly without stopping. The face of Mason passing by was horrified when he heard that William would look through all the dramas from 2005 to 2022. Running to William, he began to resent in shock the fact that he was going to watch TV for days on end, and tried to dissuade him. In response, he only said that Mason promised to leave the topic of sport for now, so he deservedly has the right to rest. A few days later, Mason approached William again, but not about sports, but about the problems with journalists that the house was guarded. Looking through the curtains at the chaos that took place under the windows of Mason, William only wrinkled and muttered several curses. A whole crowd of journalists and reporters with cars and cameras crowded under Mason's house in anticipation that William would show himself. William, in turn, was not going to leave the house and only beat himself on his forehead from the fact that these journalists had already got him, not even to mention him. Looking a little more out the window from the couch and thinking a little, William got up from the couch preparing to say something. When Mason looked at him in surprise, he told him that he was going to finish all this tomorrow and once answer them all the questions. In the end, he added that he does not plan to make more meetings, so he will make them behind him once and for all. The next day, everything was ready. Thousands of cameras were directed in only one place, to where William was now. Everyone was extremely surprised by such an early appearance, as they thought that they would have to stand under the doors for at least another month. Everyone was also surprised that he was behaving quite restrained, although he has a displeased look, but he had already left and is ready to start the conference. Taking the microphone in his hands, he uncertainly began to speak his speech that he himself was surprised at his return, and knows no more than all of them. While he was talking to the journalists, Mason was surprised how restrained and culturally he tried to talk. However, at a certain moment, everything approached the phrase in which William said that after this conference, no one else approaches him. Although short-lived, the hope for the normal interview of Mason was destroyed, although he was not surprised by such a statement. William said that everyone has the right to ask one question, each of which he would give an answer, and immediately began to take off their hands into the air. At one point, one of the journalists raised his hand, and when Mason asked him, he began to ask a very uncomfortable question. He began his question about what William asked if he had heard from Mason about the game as a battle of supermen, to which he was given a positive answer. Having received a positive answer, he decided to add the question that Mason most did not want to hear, whether William would go to esports. After this question was raised, the crowd was immediately worried. Everyone began to throw their eyes because it excited all those present. Mason had already come to terms with the fact that complete lawlessness would take place here, and there would be just a cloud of such uncomfortable questions. William, in response to this question, without thinking twice, stated that at the moment he had no desire to go to esports. The journalist did not lag behind him and continued to sit, demanding from William not only refusing, but also the reasons for this refusal. William was already starting to bother this bond member old man journalist, so he answered him in decay that he did not consider it necessary. The old man tried to go the other way. He tried to take him weakly, saying that he was feeling incapable of it. William was not so stupid as to buy for such a cheap provocation, so he replied that he would have thought so if he were an old man with bald patches. As a result, he stated that he did not like this sport, and this is not discussed. And he, in turn, is not a clown to do what others want. In order to somehow seem decent, he went to the microphone and tried to summarize the conversation, adding that he tried to satisfy everyone. When William already turned and was about to leave, the last journalist, whom he ignored and did not give an answer from the crowd. He said that a certain James Walker spoke about him and said that the head of the Seven Saviors has long been in the past, and asked what he was thinking about this. William was surprised to hear this name because he hoped to never hear it again and asked the journalist. The journalist confirmed that he is talking about James Walker, an American Eeyore sportsman who is called the best tank of America. William was even more surprised and asked the journalist about whether he was really one of the best. The journalist said that he was not, and the best three is Michael Bernard, France, Jack Mayer, Ireland, and Daniel Mansk, Germany. He said that James Walker is an outstanding player of America, but even more so, he is not included in the top three. William disappointedly rubbed his forehead, saying with irritation that even after so many years he continues to pester him. He thought and confidently gave the journalist the answer that if he did not even enter the first 3, then he would not talk to him. William also said that if he wants to fight him, he would not do it in the game, and let him come and tell him in the face. He viciously looked into the camera and added that he was buried by James Waker with his own hands in the garden. Somewhere far, this program was watched by other people who grinned, admiring the courage of the recently returned William. The president of the Korean e-sports agency grinned, looking at the TV, anticipating how James would deal with him. After what he saw, James Walker himself squeezed the phone in his fist, which is why he cracked and fell apart into small pieces. He called out to Wood, his agent, and notified him that he urgently needed tickets to Korea. The next day, Mason's house was raised on the ears in the morning due to a call from the Korea Esports Association. Mason notified that they would have the Premier League with the United States, but William only interfered with watching TV. He told him to go to talk on the phone in another place, and Mason only closed his eyes with displeasure from the conversation on 2 sides. When Mason finished talking on the phone, William asked him about what was the reason to interfere with him to watch TV. When he heard that there would be the Premier League with the United States, he did not react in any way and returned to the TV, and Mason reproached him that he was to blame for this. After Mason accused William of this, he was indignant and asked what he did to be guilty. Mason sighed and reminded William how he publicly sent the chief player of the United States at a recent conference with reporters. He also added that most likely after such a loud statement on television, he will be beside himself with rage. Mason also added that he had not entered the top 3 was too loudly a statement that he was trigger. As a result, he added that James could not fight him, so he would take out evil on the team. But William only sent him again. From the suddenly surging problems, Mason grabbed his head, and William wished him good luck and said that he would not be here until he was. Mason looked at William as a traitor, but he no longer paid attention to him because he was interested in another question. He turned to Mason and asked if Marie would come because he said earlier that she was a player of the national team of Korea. After some time, a knock of doors was heard in the corridor, rustling, and then a female voice very loudly called his mother. William jerked in surprise, lying on the couch and quietly indignant at how loud you could be. Mason's wife stood in the corridor and joyfully greeted the arrived Marie, but was surprised that she arrived so early. Marie, in response, was surprised by her mother, only smiled and replied that she arrived so early only because of William. Having examined the room, she did not see William anywhere and asked her mother about where he was, after which she was immediately taken to the living room. When they entered the room, William from the sofa joyfully greeted Marie, who froze in the doorway. After a few moments, her face began to change and was already blurred in a happy smile throughout his mouth. Still smiling joyfully, Marie scattered and jumped on William, hugging him and leaving him on her back. Why he began to wheeze. William raised himself and reproached Marie that she was no longer small and she should not do this anymore. But she did not listen to him. Turning a little more, William also smiled and said that he was also glad to see her, but he thought that she had already forgotten him. In response to his statement, she said that he always played with her and treated her with sweets, so she could not forget him. William, in response, only laughed and noticed that the children were growing very quickly, to which Marie proudly stated that she was already 23. He asked her if she came here only because of the Premier League, to which he received an answer that he was the main purpose of the visit, and then the league. They laughed a little more, but suddenly the expression on Marie's face changed, and looking into his eyes, she turned to him with a question. She asked if William really is not interested in esports, not looking away from his eyes, but she did it carefully. William, in response, only sighed heavily and asked. Not Mason Lee persuaded her to persuade him to do this. In response to the question that followed, why he refuses, William poked his finger at the TV screen. Marie looked up at William, took his hand and asked if he would not agree if she asks him. When she received a negative answer, she looked at him offended and said that he was not the same as he was before. William reacted indignantly to this statement and stated that they had all changed here, and not he. Marie turned away by resentment, saying that he had always fulfilled her requests before, but William recalled that this concerned only sweets. After sitting a little more, Marie again turned to William with a different request. To go with her for the avatars test in the association. William was again not enthusiastic about this idea, so on TV the finale of the drama that he watched was now transmitted. Marie, despite his displeased face, looked at him with an imploring look, which helped to break him down. Although William was displeased, he agreed to go with her for the avatar test. Besides, Mason was busy, so there was no one else to go. Rising from the sofa, he asked where the association was located, to which Marie replied that he himself would find out everything soon. The association was a large building, which rose among the rest of the heights of medium height, and also had a special design. Inside the association of William and Marie, the worker met a middle-aged man and asked to follow him. He said that Marie would help to test her avatar and led her to the chair necessary for immersion. Marie sat in a chair, put on a helmet, and looked quite at William while the last steps of training were held. When the preparation ended, the image of Marie was released on a large screen in front of William and an association employee. Marie was in the dungeon in full combat readiness and checked how freely she could move. She asked her to create some kind of enemy, and tinkering a little, the employee created her a huge monster. Looking at how skillfully the employee recreates previously real monsters, William was surprised at how people learn to do it all. The employee explained that this game is virtual reality, and with the help of technology they create real images of monsters and dungeons. He also added that players who first come to the association are invited to create their own avatar. Having processed the information received a bit, he again turned to the screen with the desire to see what Marie was capable of. Marie scattered and jumped above the monster's head and wrapped her around his huge neck with a wave of whip. Grinding the whip, she at high speed inflicted a blow to the monster with a sword in the second hand and cut off his head to him. Having worked a little more than the control panel, the employee said to Marie that synchronization is successful and it can come out. As soon as Marie came out of virtual reality, she immediately ran to William to ask his opinion about her skills. William smiled and pinned her, saying that her skills are not bad, like a 6-year-old girl, and she has great potential. She again invited him to try, but she repeated to play in the league that he only had to try, but he would not play. Marie also added that she just really wants to see him in action, as she heard a lot about his skills from Mason. She grew up, but due to the fact that William died, she could not look at the skills that she heard from her father's stories. Unable to resist anymore, William exhaled irritably and gave his consent to the avatar test. At first, Marie did not believe her ears, and then joyfully looked at William, who reminded her that it would be only once. The employee who stood nearby and listening to their dialogue said whether William really wants to test the game. He said that as a rule, they first make testing of abilities and then create an avatar. After William's displeased gaze, he added that since he was not going to compete, then testing is not necessary. William examined the seats that stood in the room and asked if he would sit in them or everything would be different. The employee pointed to 2 colleagues who hardly dragged the weapon and said that he needs to take it, otherwise he would be unarmed. When the employees dragged the weapons, they fell without strength, and William easily took it and noticed that it was quite light. The employee said that this is the most similar weapon to what he had, to which William said that everything was fine and threw out the shield. He said that he would be normal without a shield, and he also ends with patience, so he needs to be accelerated. Sitting in a chair, putting on a helmet and holding a weapon in his hand, William decided that it was still worth seeing what kind of game it was. In front of William, a blue glow shone, while against the background the analysis and scan of his body was carried out. Soon he ended up in a spacious blue hall, and the employee said that he was in the virtual room of the training room. Inspecting his body, William realized that the sensations are very similar to the sensations at the entrance to the gates of the dungeon. Suddenly, near his head, a small screen arose from nowhere, on which he saw a joyful Marie and an employee nearby. Having walked a little and softening his body, William asked him to be created the same enemy as created for Marie. The employee accepted his request and began to type something on the keyboard, and as a result, a monster appeared before William. The monster flew over William and looked like a slope, and a little closer, William saw Salarbana in him. He said that he did not look like those he saw, and the employee answered him that this was a special individual, and only aura can be injured. The employee also added that this individual is generated according to the data on the strongest of the existing individuals of the Salarband. After thinking a little and processing the information received, William exhaled with annoyance and threw the spear unnecessary. He extended his hand towards the Salarband and snapped his fingers, after which a huge stream of energy literally erased it from reality. The employee looked at the monitor and could not believe in what he saw, and Marie only said that it was just incredible. She said in surprise that he killed him with a click of her finger, and William was indignant, saying that there was nothing special. The employee objected that, although Salarban is not the strongest of the monsters, it is impossible to kill him with a click of his finger. William again sighed with annoyance and asked the employee to stop jokes and generate a monster to him more. While the employee was looking for him a suitable monster, He continued to inspect himself and realized that he did not feel the difference between life and this place. He again turned to the employee and said that although it was the strongest Salaban, he could not get along normally. Suddenly, his attention was distracted by a voice that said that Salaban is unrealistic to compete with the strongest of superhumans. Suddenly, the system failed, and the employee tried to do something, but the penetration from the outside was no longer interrupted. It was an attempt to connect with this virtual world from an external source, and, unfortunately, it was completely successful. In the air, not far from William, the avatar, unfamiliar to William, was generated and began to fall to the ground, shouting something. It was James Walker, who was connected from the outside, and when he fell, he viciously looked at William and asked whether his proposal was still in force. He stood in a fighting stance, waiting for an attack, but William completely ignored his presence and looked somewhere to the side. He again turned to William, asking why he was so surprised, because he called him, or he was so frightened. From the fact that William completely ignored him, he completely brutally, and saying that he would prove that William's power was worth nothing, he attacked the first. He pushed away from the ground and rushed towards William, who did not even try to defend himself, and wished him death. Having struck, he made a hole in the floor, but William did not hit the blow, and William himself disappeared somewhere, which James was surprised. Suddenly, William's voice was heard behind James, why he fell into a stupor, and said that he certainly could not scare him. William sharply appeared in James' wake behind his back, and once again repeated that it could not be so that he would be afraid of a fight with him. He added that he just thought very much about one idea and how to crank her in battle with James. James stood in front of William and carefully examined him, not understanding where he got such power and confidence. Marie and the employee still stood in misunderstanding from how James Waker managed to get inside their system. Suddenly, the door behind them swung open, and 3 people entered the room. Mason, director of the Korea Sports Association and Walker manager. The director of the association grinned and waved his hand, telling them not to be worried, because this battle is carried out with his permission. Now Marie and the employee were sitting even more shocked, as Mason said that he was busy, and now he was standing here, so with the director. Director George explained that everything was agreed and agreed on everything in advance. They simply forgot to inform them about it. After he explained everything, he turned to the manager Ella, manager James Waker, and asked if everything suits her. She said that they were grateful and satisfied, since this battle was a very difficult request for Korea. George recalled how William was in his ears in debt to him at one time, so then he could not refuse anything. He also added that he was very grateful to Ella and James, since because of this case they will most likely be able to interest William with esports. So far, William and James fought almost on equal terms. William saw all his movements and easily repelled attacks. At one point, James jumped away from William, and William admitted to himself that he was better than he expected from the very beginning. For the reason that James was stronger than expected, William decided to apply his analyzing look. Thrusting his eyes, William brought a table in front of him with the characteristics of James Waker and began to carefully examine. First of all, 2 indicators were striking at once: strength and endurance, which reached their 100% significance. William stood and continued to analyze James, and he was indignant and asked why he was just standing and looking at him. William again ignored him and finished the analysis, coming to the conclusion that he was not just a talker, but a standing fighter with potential. After he finished the analysis of James, he remembered the ability that he discovered when he was in the hospital. Throwing on the attack, he thought that on James would even be better tested than on a Salarban. As soon as he saw that James was swinging, he stopped and looked intently at him, waiting for a blow. James did not let down, and the William was thrown into the other end of the room, causing a fatal damage to a person. On the other side of the screen, everyone sat in complete shock from the fact that William had just allowed himself to cause a mortal wound. James Walker himself also stood at least shocked from wow that William allowed him to conduct this attack on him and get on his own. Suddenly, William's voice made him turn to the side where he flew, and again stand in a stupor from the fact that he is still alive. James barely managed to dodge the object that flew in his direction from the puffs of smoke at great speed. Turning back to the wall, he saw that it was a spear of William, which he threw, and this created even more questions. Again, turning to where there were still puffs of smoke from the fall of William, he could not understand how he could survive. A cough was heard from the smoke, and then William's indignant voice, who asked why so much smoke was caught up here. As soon as the smoke was dispelled, James saw William, who was sitting on the ground, whole and unharmed, but with a cut off. Grinkling, William looked at James and said that he would show him something unusual. James stood in a stupor, having no idea about how William managed to survive after such a strong attack. William said that he received this superpower after an unsuccessful meeting with death, so now he is immortal. Having examined himself again, he noticed that his ability quickly treats wounds, but in this way their duel would not be honest. William thought a little and called out an employee who was still in shock near the game control panel. He told him that at the moment he was immortal, and he received this ability after he gained his second life. Adding that with this ability the duel becomes dishonest, he asked if it was possible to somehow turn off this ability during the battle. While the employee turned his new ability to him, James stood and could not believe that William was immortal. William turned to James and said that he was immortal, but would not give him a chance to justify his defeat by his immortality. James only grinned in response and said that he was really a showback, as they say, should be checked how rumors are lying. William answered him that there are rumors because the real experience of the battle with him cannot be conveyed in any words. James said he was tired of meaningless chatter and ordered William to get up and finally start fighting with him. William, in turn, was in no hurry to get up and stated that he should first defeat the 3 strongest before this battle. Listening to ridicule that he was not even included in the 3 strongest, James began to gradually lose his temper. Without waiting for the moment when William got up, he rushed to him, but he only grinned, realizing that he pressed the patient. William managed to stand before James would have reached him, and they crossed his weapon, but William only smiled. Suddenly, the same situation was repeated as at the very beginning. Sekir James was in the ground, and William disappeared somewhere. Also suddenly, as it disappeared, also suddenly appeared. William's mocking voice came from James behind him. Turning around, he saw that William was standing his back to him, but his spear, which he beat from behind, was already centimeters from his face. Having gathered all his strength, James was able to react and jump back, to which William only grinned satisfactorily. In his thoughts, William condescendingly praised James's reaction, but also noted that this was not enough. He was already tired of all this, so he picked up his spear and, with thoughts that it was time to end, prepared for a throw. Having calculated the spear flight path, William added part of his strength to the throw and threw him towards James. When the spear flew to James, it hit the shield, throwing it back with such force that it barely stood on his feet. James stood and did not fully understand where he was, since he was very much hit by an explosive wave, and thoughts were confused. He realized that William was specially aimed at the shield, since his spear specially changed his trajectory, which was a very high level of magic. William stood in front of James and joyfully inquired him that he won, and did not plan to continue the battle. James was indignant in response, saying that the spear had passed along the tangent, and he was still able to continue their duel. William answered him that he specially left him alive since James never defeated him with such a huge shield. He continued his instructions, saying that if James is large, then this does not mean that it is necessary to take the same large shield. He said that because of the large shield, his review is limited, and James sees very poorly what is happening around him. In the end, William added that 100% is sure that James from childhood blamed tunnel vision. William said that most likely this is why he chose such a large shield, to block the blows and have time to look around. He also added that this would not work with strong opponents, reminding him of how he easily went behind him. As a result, William told James that he should change his large shield to a smaller one, and with his level of dexterity it will be a wise solution. James asked if he was lying, to which William replied that he would not, since even following his advice, he would still be a head below him. Having received such an answer, James could not decide for a long time and gather his thoughts, but said that he would try to do so. Mason at that moment on the other side of the screen stood in a slight shock from the fact that William was teaching a very strong enemy. Having received a satisfactory answer, William said that he ended here and will go further to watch his series. Remembering one thing sharply, he turned to James and said that he should pay for the consultation. James answered him that he would pay, provided that he would receive another duel with James in the Premier League in a week. William answered him that he was not going to play in any battle, since he still has a whole bunch of dramas and series. James sharply grabbed William and began to beg him to fight him in the league, and even offered him money for that. He continued to eat on William, claiming that with his abilities he should fight and not sit endlessly on the couch. All those present in the hall looked at the monitor in a stupor, as they did not expect such an act from James. Only one person was not shocked. George, the director of the association, he smiled, realizing that this was his chance. A few days after the battle, William still lay on the couch and watched the dorm, which was transmitted on TV. However, Suddenly, the broadcast was interrupted under the pretext of an important message, which is why William rose on the couch. Instead of the drama, they turned on the channel with the news where the message was transmitted about William and about his career in esports. The presenter said that after a duel with James Waker, there were hopes that William would still revise his decision. In the end, the presenter said the main news: William agreed to take part in the league, provided that America would defeat Korea dry. After this message, William for a long time could not realize what he had heard, and then he already jumped from indignation. Literally 10 minutes passed, and he was already in George's office and pushed all his anger on him. While he was indignant and tried to get out of George even a drop of information and explanations, he was sitting his back to him and was silent. He demanded to tell him who distributed this information and said that he would strangle this person with his own hands. He was also interested in where the video with James's proposal came from the network, in which William was cut out. While he continued to speak, George got up and abruptly made him a bow, apologizing to him several times, then forced him to shut up. George said that Walker was too influential at the international level, so he could not refuse him. William was slightly confused by such revelations and tried to return the conversation again in the right direction, but no one listened to him. George interrupted him, not allowing a word to say, and assured William that everything would be in order, and he raised the situation. He told William that he had put forward impossible conditions. The victory of America over Korea is dry, with a score of 11-0. George added that everyone agreed since he said that William was only interested in a strong team, and he did not need to worry. William sharply interrupted the director's monologue, shouting that he does not care about their showdowns, and he was not interested in battles. George once again assured William that his condition is impossible, so there is no need to worry so much. In addition, he decided to put pressure on Pity and said that they were familiar for a long time, and William could help him at least once. As a result, he said that he would sacrifice all the profit to William's favorite funds, where he often allocated money. William stood and suffered all this, repeating to himself that if it weren't for the past, he would have had to naive him for a long time. In the end, his patience burst, and he gave his consent, clarifying at the same time that it was only at once, no more. George was so happy about his answer that he was about to kiss him, but William was able to drive him away from himself. William once again asked George about the conditions. They should kill at least one American in a match, and that's all. George joyfully confirmed that he understood everything correctly, and he should trust him, since everything will be fine. George, due to the fact that they were already gathered, suggested that they have dinner together in honor of the conclusion of the transaction. Just in case, William specified whether their director treats, to which he received a positive answer, and therefore agreed. Leaving the office, George silently apologized to William, looking at the filled forms with a score between the teams. The next few days, the TV was torn by the news about William, which was why he started to hurt, so they did not show the dramas. Once again, he regretted that he had contacted George, and realized that from the very beginning he should have cut off all the connections with him. Having decided to distract from endless news releases, he turned off the TV and went to the glass door, looking into the yard. Suddenly, some kind of noise was distracted from his thoughts, and turning his head, William saw Mason and Marie, who trained in the yard. Mason coached Marie and developed speed and dexterity in it, forcing to quickly move from side to side. At one point, Mason threw the ball into the air, which Marie instantly saw and grabbed with the help of a whip. Mason said that this time Marie had a very good speed, but you need to accelerate even more because she is a support player. Standing behind them and listening to how Mason is trying to teach Marie to be support, William noted that this was a waste of energy. In order not to cool down just like that, William decided to analyze Marie's skills and used his analysis skill. He noted that she has a pretty good speed, but her dexterity has already reached its limits. William also noted that the maximum values of dexterity and speed would not be compared to Mason, so that she cannot live up to his expectations. He still could not believe that Marie was assigned the role of support. Since at least such an approach worked with Mason, Marie is another case. Marie sank down on the grass, voiced that she needed a break, and William at that time slowly approached them with Mason. When he came closer, Marie noticed him, but he was still immersed in the thought that everything was bad if the team in this form. Marie asked him, did he see how she trained, to which he answered, what he saw, and she also did not have to focus on dexterity. Mason tried to object, saying that Marie did not reach the right level a little, but William interrupted him. He told Mason that Marie is not him, and she needed a completely different approach, different from what was to him. William said that it is necessary to stop developing speed and dexterity, since it will not be able to become the same as he before. He also added that Marie has already reached her maximum in dexterity and in a whip, so you need to focus on another. He said that Mason decided to make her support due to the fact that their abilities are similar, but they are completely different. William turned to Marie, asking her the question of what she would do after she grabbed the enemy with a whip. After Marie replied that she would just bring him to the team, William immediately reproached her for incorrectness. He said that she herself needs to be interrupted from opponents, so it is worth focusing on strength and fencing. He came up and took Mar's whip and sword, saying that he would show everything now but only once, so you have to look carefully. Swinging with a whip, he struck the training doll, wrapping his whip around it, after which he took the sword more comfortable. By a moment, he later pulled the whip, which pulled the doll to him, and cut it with a sword into 2 even parts. Having finished, he laid the sword with a whip to the side, asking Marie whether she understood the example that he had just shown to her. Having not received an answer, he continued the lecture, saying that it was impossible to kill the enemy with a whip, so it is necessary to develop fencing. Having completed explanations and instructions, William announced that Marie needs to make 500 approaches. Mason and Marie fell into a stupor after William called such a huge number of necessary approaches. Seeing that after his words they did not budge, William began to push them so that they accelerated and began to do. He said that there are 14 days left before the league match, so they have very little time at the moment. At the same time, John, manager of James Waker, admired how his abilities grew up in such a short time. James himself also listened in surprise reports on changes in his life and physical indicators. John noticed that James became much better, like a fighter after changing his approach to defense. He also added that his weaknesses have already stopped being such, so he could soon become the top 3. Naturally, he noticed that one way or another, for significant results, long and stubborn training needed, since it is still difficult for him. After that, John said that they could gain great benefit in this situation, and James asked to clarify in money. Thinking and making several calculations, John declared James the amount they could receive, about $10 million. James plunged into thought, because 10 million is a very considerable amount, and every day they do not offer this. Having finished thinking, he looked at the TV, where they transferred the program about William, and said that all this money needed to be sent to him. The manager fell into a stupor, and then began to appeal to common sense, but James was inexorable. According to him, it was money for the consultation. Stopping, he looked into the space in front of him and shouted that he had sweat, that he would drag William into the arena. A certain amount of time passed, and the match between the national teams of Korea and the USA finally took place. Commentators said that, with a high probability, all their viewers with great impatience were waiting for the meeting of these two teams. They also mentioned that they would soon find out how the confrontation of William and James Waker would end. They said that this would be exciting, but now they need to present the participants of each team. Having first presented the Korea team, they moved to the performance of the team from the United States, whose players were seriously configured. This time, Marie was the commander and leader of her team, so she was awarded a separate place in the performance. From the USA, James Walker was the leader, which was not surprising, with his potential and determination. William sat and looked at it all through the screen and in his thoughts, prayed for showing a good result. The dungeon in which they will fight is an old castle of the underworld called the Palace of Marta Borni. There are only 3 floors in this dungeon, and each will have its own boss, and the hordes of skeletons will block the road to the teams. On the ground floor, the teams will encounter a boss skeleton warrior, a huge monster that destroys everything in its path. On the next floor, the main obstacle for both teams will be the boss, which is called the Knight of Death. Well, as a final boss on the 3rd floor, as many as 2 monsters will act: Bone Dragon and Lich. Commentators also noticed that many on this day look at them for the first time, so they considered it necessary to remind the audience with the rules. Well, finally, the teams were given the opportunity to go out and go to their places, and the audience joyfully greeted them. In the end, when the teams took their places, the commentators announced that the match was finally starting. On the ground floor, the US team immediately met with skeletons, and commentators admired their honed movements. The US team very quickly coped with the crowds of skeletons, cleaning the rooms of the dungeon one after another. They admired how quickly and rapidly the US team coped with such a huge number of skeletons. Commentators noticed that despite the fact that their movements were slow, but the blows were accurate and timely. After that, the commentators switched to the Korea national team, as it was interesting what they were doing at that moment. Looking behind the movements of the Korea national team, they admired the incredible speed they move. After observing them for some time, they realized that the Korea team did not kill monsters but simply ran through them. They did not kill a single skeleton in any room or in the second, but simply continued to run forward, ignoring their existence. Mason stood and watched their movements and encouraged them in his thoughts in the hope that everything would go clearly as it was planned. Commentators recalled that the Korea team was known for its protracted game, but now they have a clear goal: to kill the boss. They also noted that this tactic has a very high level of risk, but if successful, they will immediately receive a lot of points. If you kill the main boss of the floor, then it will be closed for some time, then the Korea team, and wants to use this game. This will give them a very strong odds in front of the players from the USA, so they very quickly ran all the rooms and reached the boss. Commentators and stands simply torn when the Korea team approached the first boss in this dungeon, a skeleton warrior. Switching again to the American team, they were at a loss, as James Walker simply stood and waited for something. One of the members of the US team settled in an ambush in a room with the boss and was waiting for something, and this caused great surprise among commentators. Players from the US national team were mocking the stupidity of the players of the Korea national team and offered to go to the second floor, but Walker refused. He said that they needed to enter the room with the boss, and the member of his team said that he would lend Walker his strength. The Korea team at that moment almost finished beating the boss, and Marie flew forward to deliver the last blow to the skeleton. Suddenly, right in front of the moment when she had to finish the boss, James Walker flew out of the shelter and knocked her right in flight. The whole team of Marie stood in a stupor without the opportunity to move, because he flew so unexpectedly that no one even noticed. Mason realized that he used the power of his member on the Urigan command, thanks to which he was able to move so quickly. Thanks to this strengthening and strong impetus, Marie threw it to the side and, hitting the wall, she was instantly killed. James said that it was a good idea to beat the boss right away, but only victory is important in this game. This is the main reason for their defeat. After his words, absolutely the entire national team of America flew out of his back and began to attack the already weakened skeleton warrior. Having carried out literally a few attacks on it, they finished it off, and the system informed that the floor would be closed in 10 minutes. Despite such a head start, James Walker decided that everything needed to be finished right here and gave the order to attack the participants of the Korea national team. The national team of America mercilessly attacked the Korea national team and began to shred them to the right and left, not giving a chance to escape. Commentators noticed that the Korea team was very weakened after the battle with the boss, so their positions are very deplorable. Standing before the last living participant in the Korea national team, James Walker swung and said that this time they finished. After he said this phrase, he swung harder and cut the last player, finishing the first round. Commentators solemnly announced that the US team won Korea in dry, and the second round will begin after a complete restoration of forces. Marie walked along the corridor in the thought that they could not do anything again, and they lost again with the defeat. She was also very upset about the fact that William made so much effort, but they all turned out to be in vain. Entering the room where their team was resting, she stood on the threshold of surprise, as William was sitting inside and already instructed their team. He said that he was sobbing bloody tears at the moment when he looked at their game, and their team should listen to his advice. Someone from the national team tried to object, saying that their coach is Mason, but William only ordered him to close his mouth, after which all the questions were disappeared. William said that he had not the slightest desire to get into this situation and this game, but he decided to regret them. He said that their idea to quickly kill the boss was really good, but the Americans are stronger than them in all respects. Also, William added that it does not matter how many times they will fight with the US team. The chances of winning will always be 0. After that, he said that he had not just come here, and if they listen carefully to him now, they will be able to kill Walker. William said that the Palace of Martha Borney is one of the dungeons that he passed with the president of the association. He assured them that this is a very light location. Only the third floor would pose at least some danger to them. However, the problem was that with their level of skills, even such a light dungeon would be a big problem. He also said that they had a pretty good plan, but it would be nice if their plan also worked. Their main problem was the lack of intelligence. They immediately rushed to the boss without even following the actions of the enemy's team. Then he reproached them for the fact that they had no ability to think in advance. They would not be able to fight with the United States, even if they killed the boss. He summed up that the Korea team deservedly was defeated, as they missed the elementary foundations. William hit himself on his forehead from disappointment at the level of the game of the national team, and also regretted Mason who trains them. After standing a little more in such a pose, he announced that the past still could not change, so the conversation about the first round can be finished. William once again asked for silence and said that, "Now you can go to the point, and he will tell them how to act further." The second round began the next day, and the commentators immediately noticed that the US team moves more actively than usual. They suggested that they specifically use tactics with division into two groups to quickly defeat the Korea national team. Commentators noticed that such tactics are better than the rest of the USS, the tank of the team, James Waker. They were about to bury the hope of the victory of Korea, but the sudden action of Marie made the stands and commentators freeze in shock. Marie, barely appearing on the battlefield, immediately rushed forward, starting to act more actively than she did before. Commentators were surprised that the national team used to play from defense, but now Marie changed his position and acts completely differently. This time, William sat satisfied, looking at the actions of the Korea national team, since everything was still clearly according to his plan. He also noticed that if they do everything in clarity according to him, then they will have a small chance to win. Marie, after a conversation and training, ran around the dungeon with complete confidence that they would win this round. The scout of the U.S. national team, as the last time, stood in the shelter, but he informed James that he did not see the players of the Korea national team. Walker told him that he and several more members of his team remain in ambush, since there is only one passage there. Suddenly, while James was already looking forward to the battle with William, the wall began to tremble behind him, and noise began to come from there. Turning to the noise, he saw that part of the wall behind him began to collapse, and a bright light appeared due to faults. After a few moments, the wall finally collapsed, opening James's gaze, a secret move from which members of the Korea national team began to run out. William told them that the first step towards the victory over Waker was a successful intelligence, as it is necessary to find out the number of players near the walker. He said that this time the Korea national team will not have a goal of hitting monsters or killing a skeleton warrior, as this is the wrong path to victory. William told them that only one passage to the palace was known to the players in the Battle of Supervisors, since they were not in a real dungeon. He told them that there is also a secret passage connecting the sides of the Korea national team and the US national team. The passage is hidden in the wall, but it will help Marie with the search. This will help them find out what the team of their opponents plans. Further, after intelligence, all 11 players of the Korea national team will go along a secret passage. They will be divided and attack the US team. As a result, William encouraged them before the game, wishing good luck and saying that this time they will definitely be able to defeat the US team. Also, before the game, William approached Marie and gave advice on how to kill Walker. She needs to beat him on her feet. Marie was surprised since James Walker is a near-battle fighter, and the legs clearly cannot be a weak place with such a strong player. William explained to her that on his advice, Walker changed his shield, but was still not used to the fact that he did not protect his legs due to small sizes. He said that after winning them, it is not to put a desire to give them a single point, so they will follow all the parties. William asked him to trust him, and if they do everything as he said, then because of an unexpected attack, they will have every chance of victory. Flying out of the secret passage, Marie noticed that the national team of America really did not suspect this, and thanked William. Commentators were torn, not having time to comment on the sudden attack of the Korea team from a secret passage to the US team. The support player in the team of Marie put on her the effect of fiery concentration to make it easier to kill opponents. Fiery concentration is an effect aura that allows you to make opponents around the carrier weaker. Although the attack was sudden, James Walker quickly adapted and prepared to beat off the sudden explosion of the Korea national team. Looking around, he saw the members of his team fall one after another, and confidence in victory became much weaker. While he stood and watched his team, Marie had already managed to earn several points for 2 murders. Suddenly, he noticed support players who decided to attack him from the back, but managed to react and earn a 3rd murder. Having adapted a little, he shouted to his whole team that everyone needs to gather here, since the situation is critical. However, it was a little late. They were already surrounded by 8 players in the Korea national team, and there were only 3 of them themselves. The players of the Korea national team did not stand still and attack them, and the players of the US national team were not so rapidly and accurately reflected their attacks. James Walker was not going to give up and began to give a rather strong rebuff, earned another murder, throwing his weapon. After he threw his weapon, only the shield remained in his hand, and it was at that moment that he felt Marie behind him. Turning around, he did not see her behind his back and fell into a stupor, because he was sure that she was there a second ago. Marie fell upon Walker with a crushing attack, running out of his shield where she was in a blind zone for him. The attack of Marie caused a huge damage to James, but she already ran behind him, stopping her offensive for a second. When James thought that he was given a second chance, he felt a whip on his leg and realized that this was the end for him. Marie pulled the whip with all her might, and James Walker fell on his back, unable to defend or resist more. Looking around, he saw how the other members of his team had already killed, having received glasses for this, and resigned to the fact that they lost this fight. James continued to lie on his back and watched as Marie slowly but decisively reducing the distance between them. When she came closer, he asked if William told them how to hold this round in a new way and win. Marie did not answer, but only directed the sword to James, allowing him to say his last words before she kills him. James said nothing, but only grinned at how cleverly they outwitted them and won this battle thanks to new tactics. Mason was in shock, listening to commentators, who announced that the Korea team already had 5 murders and they were gone. William, who was lying on the couch next to Mason, only grinned, saying that he was telling him that they had wounded Walker. The second round ended, and the commentators could not calm down, wondering how the Korea team was able to surprise everyone. Yes, the match ended in the victory of the US team, but they still showed such a result that they never showed. The Korea team was defeated only because they were attacked by the second part of the US team at a time when they had almost no strength. However, all the same, despite the defeat, the Korea national team was able to kill 5 opponents and make more noise than the US victory. They also showed a repetition of the explosion of the wall, which made a secret move to secret. This moment was the culmination of today's game, and in the center of all attention was the player, the captain of the Korea team, Marie, who personally committed 4 out of 5 killings. She stood joyfully and accepted all praise and enthusiastic cries, realizing that they mentally won this match. Mason, as the head coach of the Korea national team, stood on stage, and recently arrived journalists had already interviewed him. The reporter said that in this round his wards were able to show a completely different level and asked about his impressions regarding this. Mason replied that he, like his team, believes that it was an excellent experience and they are not going to stop there. The reporter also noted that in this round their team used a hidden move, which was impressive, and asked if they themselves thought up before. Mason smiled, confirming that many really surprised such a move, because no one even suspected this passage. He also said that the game was held in a specific place, so before the second round, they requested special assistance. While he was saying this, he looked towards William, who was sitting aside on a bench and watched the interview process. Seeing his gaze, William turned irritably, realizing that he again conceived something connected with esports. Further, the interview was taken from Marie, who was still shining with joy, and with the same mood introduced herself as a reporter. Surrosing in response, the reporter noted that she showed a good result and asked whether she had a new approach to training. Marie replied that she trained a lot and had a lot with William, and also that his secret move was precisely his idea. Listening to the fact that Marie was saying a reporter, William sighed irritably and realized that they would not let him live calmly. He also asked a rhetorical question about why they always mention him in their conversations in various interviews. Suddenly, he heard a familiar voice behind him, who answered his question that they simply tell the truth no more. Seeing the director of the association behind his back, William irritably answered him that he needed to give an interview and not chat with him. The director, in response, said that he was already too old for an interview, so do not drive him away from where he feels good. In response to William's question about why he was mistaken near him, George replied that he did not need a reason to be near. George asked if his idea was to use a secret move, to which William nodded, clarifying that it was perhaps in vain, because it was only a sport. As a result, he was indignant, saying that this was the only normal solution since the level of the team was very low. The director missed his words past his ears and asked if he was teaching Marie, since she completely adopted his battle style. William got up from the bench and said that he had no particular desire to teach Marie, but George said that he still had talent. In response to the last phrase, William proudly spread his hands and confirmed his words, saying that he was really magnificent. The director decided to try luck for the last time and invited William to try to find the best use for his skills. William was indignant because he had already won the dispute between them, so he is not obliged to participate in any competitions and games. The director said that this was his last sentence and he would no longer pester, but asked to listen to him. He said that the new season will start soon, the higher league, where the best players in the world of superhumans will compete. After listening to this, William skeptically asked if the director was going to offer him to participate in this major league. The director objected, saying that it would be brazenly on his part, but I would like William to simply join the team. He sadly looked down, realizing that he would most likely refuse, as in the past times, while William answered him what he would think. Not immediately realizing what answer he received, George asked William to repeat his words, to which he asked if he had deaf from old age. George was still standing and could not believe that William agreed to think about his offer, because he constantly refused. William said that it was a fascinating, but even more exciting to look at how Marie fought. In the end, he added that all the same, the real dungeons disappeared so he can only try his strength in the battle of superhumans. To joy, George grabbed William, grabbing him and starting to stroke his head, saying that he voiced his decision very well. He also added, showing William the screen that the video with their team scored several million views in just an hour. Comments under the video were torn from admiring and joyful comments, where they praised William and Marie. Escaping from the director's grip, William said that he seemed to be old, but not to occupy his strength, to which he replied that he was just very glad. William objected that, in fact, he only said that he would think, and George should not hope much because the chances are 50-50. Contrary to the expectations of William, the director of the association only shone even more and said that there were no problems and let William think well. William asked whether there was really a little time left to the Major League, as George told him. When he received an affirmative answer, he thought, because for such events they choose the best of the best. After a little thought, he turned to the director of the association, saying that even in case of consent he has several conditions. The director looked at him in surprise but did not object, as it would be dangerous for a solution, and asked what the same conditions he had. He also added that he was ready to do everything that William will only ask for, since he needed to drag him into the team in any way. William, when he heard consent, grinned joyfully, clearly planning some very interesting idea that promises to be fun. The next day, Mason stood in the garden opposite William and did not understand how he should react at all to what he had just heard from him. In response to Mason's indignant exclamation, William said that everything seemed to be very clear and explained to him accessibly. He said that George promised to fulfill any of his desires if he agrees to participate in the battle with the high-level teams. William also added that because of this he begins a new life, although he wanted to spend it on the couch in front of the TV. He also explained that since he took up such a serious business, then everything must be done perfectly and properly. William said that he did not think that he needs training, but given the level of players in his team, he will have to drag everyone behind him. Mason apologized that he had taught them poorly, and said that he understood his motivation, but did not understand what he was doing among his plans. William lazily explained that after Marie, he is the next one who is at least something of himself. And besides William, no one can kill him. Mason was indignant that William could not kill him, to which he answered him that he had not held a weapon in his hands for 17 years, so who knows. William also added that such a great coach will not scare him, but during this time he will try to bring him into a normal form. Just in case, Mason specified whether William understands the fact that he is no longer as strong as before. He is already 48. Having analyzed it with his ability, William really saw that over the years all his characteristics have fallen in their meanings. After a little thought, he came to the conclusion that returning all his characteristics to the previous level is possible and not so difficult. Smiling mockingly, he asked Mason if he understands that from tomorrow, a real hell was coming for him. Remembering how hellish were the training of William, Mason realized that from tomorrow he would have come to an end. Sitting in the office, George sorted out the conditions of William in his thoughts. He will be in a team with Marie, and Mason will also participate. He also imagined how much the event will have, and how many sponsors will appear when 2 of the 7 Savior will be in the same team. The director of the association marked the news that Mason and William would be in the same team, which instantly scattered on the internet. On all newspapers and sites of the media, news was already actively walking that Mason, Marie, and William would fight in the same team in the Major League. Mason stood in his yard and listened to comments from William, who asked him whether he remembered what he taught him. The answer is, if your technique is lame, then you need to move faster than the enemy, after which William was indignant that he remembers everything, but did not. Mason said that he understood and try faster, after which he began to concentrate and prepare for the attack. After a small pause, he made a jerk and rushed towards William, who stood opposite him with a shield. As soon as he reduced the distance between them, he swung and made a shield on the shield, which William put up in front of him. After the blow, Mason moved away from William and asked if his result was arranged this time or not. When William told him that he had managed to make more blows earlier, Mason asked him to make a discount at his age. He also bent and complained to William that at his age it was very difficult for him to endure such training. In response, William only told him not to whine, since before he would call such a training easy scumbag. In response to the claim that they are already sticking out here for 8 hours, William replied that the series began soon, so they need to hurry. Mason objected and said that the series would wait, since they need to go to one place today. They came to the building of the Association of Assistory of Korea, where at the entrance they were met by an already familiar employee, Ethan, who turned out to be an administrator. Also, William was introduced to the person who was next to the administrator, Brown Turner, a member of the World Battle of the World organization. William was dissatisfied with the situation, as he remembered that he had already tested his avatar not so long ago. He was explained that this was only a test version, and for a complete and accurate creation of an avatar, several tests need to be passed. Ethan also explained that despite the fight with James Waker, their whole test affected only William's physical capabilities. They need to collect all the statistics and data so that the character is as consistent with William from reality. They also clarified that there were no problems with complete synchronization, but it is always better to copy data from reality. In response to William's questioning look, Ethan explained that complete synchronization is possible, where the avatar is you, only in the virtual world. He also added that the avatar can reveal skills that have not yet appeared in reality, which changed William's idea of technology. When William admired the level of technology, Ethan said that this is a secret development, and employees are scattered around the world. William was suspicious of this information, suggesting that the force could be based on the force that copies the real world. He once again clarified whether they knew how everything is arranged, since the creators can pursue some other goals besides esports. Throwing away sad thoughts, William said that even in the event of a monster's attack, he will be able to kill them all. William was taken to a special room for verification and said that they would need to check its speed, strength, and aura. At first, there was a check of force that was carried out using a machine, where it was necessary to pull the handle. After waiting a little, William pulled the handle and put a sufficient amount of strength, but she was tight even for him. After the machine gun calculated the force attached for a jerk, William was asked to twitch the handle several times. When William finished the test for strength, Eaton and the rest noticed that the power indicators are not as large as for the hero. The next check was dexterity. He needed to press both switches in different ends of the room. When William began to carry out the test for dexterity, everyone was shocked by the fact that the tank was able to move so quickly. After the system informed William that the test was completed, he stopped and asked about the result. The result did not suit him, so he passed the test again, gaining the desired 971 score. He turned to the administrator, asking what maximum score was received when testing dexterity. When he was told that the highest result was 1,007 points, Mike Burner received. He recognized this name from the videos that he watched. William also said that they say that this Mike Burner is as fast as Mason in his youth, but he doubts it. William liked to score points in this testing, so he concentrated for the next attempt. He felt that it was in excellent shape today, so he could score a score above the previous ones. Having finished the concentration, he ran away and touched the 2 switches as quickly as possible. Looking at his movements and then at testing results, those present could not believe the numbers that were burning on the screen. On the screen of the testing apparatus, the number of thousands burned, which said that William had speed like the fastest player in the world. William thought about the fact that he did not have the maximum indicator of dexterity, but he was able to equalize with the fastest supernomers. Thinking that, perhaps, he could go beyond his own capabilities, he asked to once again pass the test for strength. Twinged by the handle of the already familiar apparatus, William thought that the main thing is concentration, and it was she who decides everything. All those present, only in complete shock, watched how the indicators grow with each test. William stood and analyzed himself, coming to the conclusion that he had already reached the limit both in strength and in dexterity. But he needs more. He thought that such a rapid growth of characteristics cannot simply be associated with a concentration, but there should be something else. He remembered that he had once experienced such a feeling. When he fought in the very last dungeon from which he got here, William recalled that it was at that moment, on the verge of death, he was able to exaggerate his indicators and raise the will of will above the maximum. Following the logical thoughts followed. And why then fight at all, if he will defeat anyone with immortality and willpower? This began to seem very suspicious to him. Everything indicated that someone wants his participation in the battle and his crushing victory. After that, an aura check followed, for which an incomprehensible white sphere was placed in front of William. In order to check the aura, he was told to touch it, after which he noticed that there were no such exact methods for measuring the aura before. He remembered how he trained diligently to raise the aura level to 100, but in vain, because the level of the aura is very difficult to change. As soon as he began to pour his aura into the sphere, everyone again fell into a stupor since every second it only increased. At the moment when William began to pour aura into the sphere, he was 100% sure that now his aura was at the maximum. When he asked about the result, they announced his trembling voice that he had just set a new record in the level of aura in the history of mankind. William did not bother this drop, and he only confirmed this with a pleased look, saying that for him this is a couple of trifles. He was told that he beat the previously existing record, which belonged to one of the seven savior, Charlotte. William was surprised that she had such an indicator, but guessed that despite the lack of power, she went forward due to her self-confidence. The administrator notified William that all the checks were successfully completed, but he needed to clarify one moment. He told William that during the game he could not use his newly acquired ability, Immortal. William did not surprise and did not upset this fact, because it was logical that in this type of game it would be too strong. A few days later, a certain cult began to rage again, singing the honors of William and its achievements. They believed that thanks to their faith William, they would lead them to the light, and they would gain salvation, and the world would remain intact. They believed that the world would soon collapse, and they believed only in William's forces. And the most important among them raised a photograph of William above his head. He told everything that, thanks to their faith, William he heard them, and rebelled from the dead in order to save this world. He also called back to the faith of others and said that if they continue to believe, then soon the time will come. William and Mason were in the yard when the noise of the representatives of this cult flooded the whole street and prevented them from training. William did not understand what kind of huge crowd of people in raincoats who did nothing but screaming his name. They continued to stand at the fence and shout his name, but in their phrases sometimes "our savior" and "we believe in you" were sometimes found. William asked Mason whether this was journalists, but he answered him that this was the William community, who consider him their god. Hearing the name of this community, William began to sort through the moments when he could see them before. Suddenly, insight surged against William, and he asked if he took these guys for reporters when he was in the hospital. Mason confirmed his words and said that they believed that the world would fall soon, and William only considered them a bunch of idiots. Mason said that they continue to believe in him only for the reason that he literally rebelled from the dead, which William did not like. William said that they would teach them a lesson, and went in their direction, and Mason's screams and requests could no longer stop him. Suddenly jumping onto the fence, he rose above the crowd of people in raincoats and loudly ordered them to stop his mouths. After a little pause, they continued to shout their phrases, and William again asked them to close their mouths. After he asked them to shut up a second time, they listened to him, and William tried to reach some kind of compromise. When he began to talk to them, they continued to pour their phrases from time to time, so his patience burst. William in a rude uniform sent them all away, adding that if they again follow him, he would kill them. He also called them a bunch of crazy people who would just follow some person throughout the day. People in the crowd began to whisper, gradually coming to the conclusion that William thus experiences their faith in him. They suddenly surrounded him, looking into his eyes and chanting his name without a stop, pushing him closer to the fence. William backed away because he did not expect such pressure from them, taking into account the fact that he promised to kill them all in this case. Mason, who stood and watched everything from the side, realized what would happen now and involuntarily backed back. William began to boil and quietly, but so that everyone heard, said that if they would not leave in 10 seconds, he would kill them all. Literally 10 seconds later, William was already sitting on the mountain of bodies, but he did not kill them, but only cut down, since there were even children among them. He turned to the boy, the last one who remained conscious, and asked if he would follow him or not. After the frightened boy replied that he would no longer follow him, William smiled and let him go. Going down to Mason, William reached out and lazily announced that they could continue to train again with calm souls. Mason told William that he was just crazy, to which William did not react in any way and asked for more information about the cult. Mason did not receive his answer, but only said that they need to go, since crowds of journalists will soon run here. When William suggested killing them, Mason was indignant and said that they would attract even more attention to themselves. While they stood and calmly spoke, behind them from the roof of a tall building watched an incomprehensible silhouette in a cloak. Feeling the stranger's gaze, William turned in that direction, and Mason asked what happened. Not seeing anyone on the side from which William felt a threat, he reassured Mason and said that it simply seemed to him. A few days later, Agent James Waker, an agent of the U.S. Battle of Supervisory Association, arrived at the local Korean airport. Oliver, that was the name of the agent, said that he was glad to visit Korea again, and hopes that the era of supermen would return to this beautiful country. His companion said that he was already able to pick up a bunch of supermen from here in the United States, but Oliver said that he could not pick up the best. She told him that the seven saviors were never interested in the battle. Only Charlotte was interested, but lost interest due to restrictions. Oliver said that despite the fact that he had missed talented superhumans earlier, he would not miss now, and William will belong to him. Suddenly, a person who arrived at the airport forced them to interrupt the dialogue and with surprise to look at his arrival. The airport included an elderly man who was clearly very familiar, but clearly undesirable to agents from the USA. It was Jake Rend. He was an agent of the Battle of Supermanagement Association of Europe, and his presence did not mean anything good. He slowly approached the agents from America and greeted them mockingly, pretending that he had not recognized them at first. He wished that this battle was honest, to which Oliver grunted indignantly, thinking that it was easy for him to say. While Oliver and Jake stood and aggressively threw their eyes, reporters have already switched attention from them to other arrivals. The airport also arrived at the Moreau brothers, the owners of the Paris club Lumiere, which William destroyed the business with dungeons. They dreamed that they should take an autograph from him, or even better, to force to sign a cooperation contract in them. All these famous people stood and silently looked at each other, realizing that they all arrived in order to get William for themselves. Suddenly, silence reigned at the airport, and the sound of the heels of a woman who had just arrived. Charlotte, the youngest of the seven savior, entered the airport and asked where her younger brother is now. William admired how many people gathered on the day of the match, where he would first act as a player of battle. He also joked that it was good that the population after the war with the demons was reduced, for which he received a remark from Mason. Mason, in everything else, asked William at least this time to keep himself in his hands, but did not receive an affirmative answer. William simply ignored his question and went forward along the red carpet, realizing that there will be a lot of fun soon. While they walked along the red carpet to the entrance, crowds of reporters began to push them, and Mason asked why all this. William only smiled and, turning to him, said that he needed to carefully protect him from this crowd of curious reporters. And the crowd of curious reporters itself was already on the way to both of them, shouting right on the move and demanding from them at least some interview. Mason found the best way out of the situation and, pushing William into the thick of the reporters, quickly faded from there. While William casually answered questions from the surging crowd, he mentally cursed Mason and imagined what he would do later. Reporters asked meaningless questions. What is your condition? What do you feel before your first game? However, the last question was that he knew that Charlotte also came here, attracted his attention, and he clarified whether it was true. When he heard in response that she came here to visit the younger brother, he fell into a stupor from the fact that he was called that. Barely how free from annoying reporters, William aggressively began to open hundreds of doors in search of his own. While he went around the premises, he still heard discussions about his ear, and this began to annoy. When he still found Mason and Marie, he did not immediately run in, but found out if they knew about Charlotte's arrival here. Hearing this, Mason did not react in any way, and Marie was even delighted with her presence in this game. Mason went to William and warned him not to run into reporters who were ready to gobble him up. William in response asked to remind you who abandoned him and left the reporters to a complete and merciless torn apart. Mason said that he should better prepare for a meeting with Charlotte, and William hoped that she was not in order to take revenge here. Charlotte was the youngest of the seven savior, originally from China, and had a huge and impressive force. She was born and raised in a rich family as the only daughter, and from childhood developed her abilities in herself. In her then 17 years, she felt like a queen and hated William, who lowered her from heaven to earth. He constantly scolded her, pointed out mistakes, and treated her rudely because of her arrogant character and small willpower. William constantly shouted at her, reported for the slightest miscalculations, which very quickly began to get her out of her temper. She also constantly heard from him the words that there was nothing more useful besides the enormous power in her. Remembering all this, Marie and Mason advised William to buy a tuxedo, as soon the funeral is outlined. Having touched this topic a little more, Mason threw unnecessary thoughts out of his head and said that they had things to do more than Charlotte. He turned to the whole team that gradually gathered near them during their small dialogue about Charlotte. Mason's main task at the moment was to get the trust of players to himself, otherwise he will be a very bad captain. He mentioned that the rules for conducting such games are known to many, but in view of the fact that there are new players among them, he would explain everything again. Athletes are divided into a team of love and a team of hope, and then hold a charitable game. The love team includes the players of the national team and the team of hope. All newcomers, except Marie. Mason declared himself the leader of the team, captain, since he has a lot of experience in the preparation and organization of teams. Then he pointed out that William would participate in this game, after which William lazily greeted those present. Mason also mentioned that he had not held a weapon in his hands for a long time, so he hopes for each of those present. He was addressed by the deputy leader of the team with the phrase that they would not lead, and hoped that he would lead them to victory. William stood and listened to Mason's appeal, admiring his ability to push his speech, making sure that he was really suitable for the role of the captain. Applying his analyzing look to scan Mason and Marie, William was convinced that there would be a great team of them. Another thing was the rest of those present, in which William could not see anything particularly useful. Suddenly, the high indicators of one boy, who, along with the others, was delighted with Mason, still caught his eye. The abilities of this guy were also very direct, and their use could be of great benefit. William also noticed that he had a very large limit of strength, 90, so he had a very great potential. William thought that if you train it, then he could become a very good tank, and called him to himself. The guy stepped forward and introduced himself as the name of Charlie, and also called his position, the main player who brings damage. William was shocked by the fact that a near battle player brings the main damage, and asked, but the guy could not connect a few words from excitement. William asked him for the third time if he was not tanking, to which Charlie already clearly replied that he was not, but he always dreamed of being such a tank as William. William with annoyance noticed that he did not even know about his second force, and the reason for this is his incorrect choice of his position. He suggested that he was given such a strange role because of the appearance, because how such a thin guy could be a tank in the team. William sighed and asked Marie to bring him a shield, to which Charlie reacted with excitement, because he did not know what they were going to do. He held out Charlie's shield, after which he took his own, but he still did not understand why he was given a shield, because it was an attribute of tanks. William did not pay attention to his questions and began to show Charlie the basics of using the shield, since there was little time. Charlie tried to object, saying that his role was to bring damage, but William answered him that he was an idiot, and his role as a tank. In the crowd, they began to talk that William is really crazy to change the role of the player less than the day before the game. Charlie from Fright tried to appeal to the captain's help, Mason, but he only shook his head, because William knew better what to do. Having listened to William's angry speeches, Mason approved Charlie's new role, announcing a new distribution of players and roles. Charlie was shocked by how quickly they changed his position, and from how much it was ignored. William tried on armor and noted that it was very strong, but at the same time unusually light, and Mason only confirmed this. Mason's expression was not particularly funny, but he explained this by the fact that he never thought that he would have to put this form. Remembering something, Mason turned to William, saying that there would be no problems with weapons, and he prepared something for him. After several minutes of expectations, William took a spear from Mason, which was exactly like how he fought in the dungeons. Mason also warned William that despite the fact that he was strong, he fought only with monsters but did not fight people. He noted that due to the fact that the rest fought only with people, they will have more experience than both of them together. After listening to such a sad speech, William only smiled, saying that there was nothing to worry about, and called Mason as a joke, Captain. Continuing to smile, William carefully looked at Mason and offered to show the excellent game of his older sister. Before the start of the match, the stands were torn from the number of people and screams, since the presence of two saviors was a sensation. William noted that even in appearance it is clear where the national team, since the characteristics differed from them. Their characteristics were on average at the level of 70 points, and their average level was 60, which gave superiority. William asked Mason what he was guided by during the recruiters of the players, and received the answer that it was important for him that the indicators were approximately equal. It was a standard type of selection, to select the players so as not to gain too strong or too weak to the team. Suddenly, William's attention was taken by the impudent player who, it seems, did not care at all. William noted that despite the zero interest, he has very good parameters, but the mental force is a full bottom. While he was thinking that he had so small limit, and he did not even develop half, the guy began to feel a little uncomfortable. He tore William from thought, not very politely asking what he was staring at him, after which William asked if he was telling him. He replied that he was telling him, remembering how he still annoyed him for a different series of different reasons. He remembered how he saw him at the previous match when Korea competed with the US team, where he behaved like an arrogant idiot. While he was thinking and in thought insulted William, William decided to change places with his teammate to be closer to the boy. Having changed places, William immediately asked where this guy came from, since he sees how much he does not like him. He confirmed that he did not like William, since he behaved very arrogantly on a match, and it is unlikely that anyone would like it. He also added that this arrogance was so disgusting because he had never before participated in the battles, but William only laughed. Seeing how, despite his arguments, they laugh at him anyway, the guy wanted to be indignant, but William interrupted him with a question. William, with a smile, asked who was the father of the boy, to which he replied that his father is the vice president of the association. From the conversation, their voice distracted their voice, which came through the speakers above their heads, who asked them to go to the arena. When William already wanted to go, the guy called him, asking what he had in mind by this question and what he knows about his father. William lazily threw over his shoulder that nothing special. He was just wondering who and how he could grow such an idiot. While the guy was pouting with indignation, William added that it was difficult for him to breathe in the same air with such, and he hates arrogant. However, in the end, he still thanked him, because of him, William had a desire to win this battle and lower the boy. When the commentator announced William's exit to the arena, the stands began to burst with renewed strength and volume, which was not surprising. While he was going to his place, the commentators noted that the day had finally arrived when they would see William in the Battle of Superman. Let the match were charity, but in the stands you could see many: James Walker, Jake, Oliver, and other famous people. Also at the stands were attended by the Morrow and Charlotte brothers, who especially wanted to observe the game of William. After the beginnings of the game, commentators said that the first match will be held in Ajas Spiral Cave. The Ajas Cave itself was 3 circles, in the center of which there is a secret path, which leads to the dungeon. The Love Team personified the national team of Korea, and members of the Seven Savior played for the Team of Hope. Shortly before the start of the match, Mason gathered his entire team and began a briefing to discuss tactics, actions in the game, and other things. He said that both teams will begin movement at the same time. Each from its point, Hope begins with the 5th, Love with the 1st. These zones are located opposite each other, so they will begin to hunt in the 5-1 zone and will advance to the 5-2 zone. After Mason said that William 1 would go to the 5-3 zone and kill the local boss, bringing additional points to the team. It was also stated that they could cross the enemy's team at one of the stages, but Mason, William, and Marie will deal with them. Just in case, Mason assured the team that it doesn't matter how many opponents will be. The 3 of them will lay as much as they like. Listening to this, William did not understand why they simply could not go the wall to the wall and win, and why Mason was so insecure in his abilities. However, after thinking a little more, William threw back these thoughts, as it was a good chance for him to understand the battle of battle and stretch. In the 5-1 sector, the starting point of the Hope team, players have already appeared, and Mason immediately ordered everyone to build and take up positions. The main source of damage was again Marie, as her abilities allowed her to do this easier than the rest. Mason acted as a support player, as he did at the time when he and William cleaned the dungeon for the dungeon. William and Charlie acted as tanks, since they had unique innate abilities and talents for this role. Looking around in the dungeon, a strange but slightly pleasant feeling of nostalgia for dungeons surged on William. It was especially pleasant to see again how William put it: black rubbish with paws, since killing them is a complete pleasure. In the sector 1-1, the starting point of the Love team, everything was not as smooth and coordinated as the Team of Hope. The captain of the Love team reminded Thomas, the guy with whom William spoke, that he had to beat spiders, but he only snapped back. Thomas was the main player who caused damage, but at the moment his thoughts were not scored by what was needed. He could not throw William the mocking face of William, and was literally burning to take revenge on him in this game. He continued to think about him and revenge on him every second, and even when huge spiders fled to him, he continued to curse William. Distributed from such thoughts, Thomas almost burned half of his team, but did not notice this, but only vowed to kill William with his own hands. At this moment, a Team of Hope successfully cleaned the premises, and William set up a shield to Mason to launch it into the air. Having scattered and jumping away from the shield that William set him, Mason flew into the thick of the monsters at high speed. Having reached his destination, he exposed the sword and began to kill the monsters to the right and left, not knowing fatigue. When he realized that there were too many monsters, he gave a signal to William, and he covered it with a shield, giving the opportunity to move away. Commentators at this time admired their coordinated work, calling this a real duet of 7 saviors. After some time, they are together, but without large power costs, they successfully cleaned the first zone. Looking around, William and Mason noticed that only one side was left, and without hesitation rushed right there. Watching how easily and masterfully they cleaned the zones, Charlie noticed that this match is easier than their usual matches in the arena. He also admired William's amazing skills, not understanding whether he was always so good or recently made a jump in the level of skills. After William made an ordinary attack, but made a lot of damage, Charlie realized that he had witnessed William's famous reception. Charlie realized that he should not cool down and began to fill the shield with an aura, noting that it was unusual for him. He also rushed into battle with spiders, but always kept in his head that now he needed to concentrate the aura both on the sword and on the shield. It was very difficult for him at the beginning, since he did not use the shield at all before, and now it was also necessary to fill it with an aura during protection. Watching Charlie from the side, William was surprised at how much jump he made in his skills in the tank and the concentration of aura. Having watched a little more, William also decided that it was too boring to cool and began to look after new monsters. Looking at himself a huge spider, he rushed to him, and when he decided to attack him, he immediately covered himself with a shield. As soon as the spider ran into the shield, William again applied the same technique that Charlie saw, instantly killing the spider. The brothers that watched from the stands screamed with joy that they saw a signature technique, a meter attack, and turned to Charlotte for clarifications. Charlotte confirmed that it really was a meter attack, which really seems to be an ordinary spear blow. Meter attack is an attack, thanks to which the spear follows its target at a very high speed, amazing the target within a radius of a meter. It is thanks to the super sulfur and hone technique that he creates an ultra-suffering attack, from which it is almost impossible to evade. Despite the complexity of the technique, William is always calm and relaxed when performing, which makes the technique so inconspicuous. Charlotte said that this is a technique when performing which you can't make mistakes, but he applies it playfully. What is now? What is 17 years ago? Not noticing the last remaining monster, William asked his team that he was already clean. Hearing a rustle behind his back, William turned sharply and sent the impoverished monster into flight to the next use of the technique. Seeing that the monster is still alive and trying to run away, William concentrated and prepared for a throw of his spear. Alternating the distance to the target, he threw a spear, and it flew towards the monster, dissecting the airspace. When the spear reached its goal and finally finished off this monster, William smiled joyfully and said that not a single monster would escape from him. The zone was completely cleaned, so Mason gathered his entire team near him to praise and voice a further plan of action. When he reached the moment where it was said about the transition to the next section, he realized that there was no William nearby and began to look for him with his gaze. Charlie stepped forward and said that after the murder of the spider, he went on in the zone 5-3 and said to pull up to him as quickly as possible. Mason exhaled irritably, saying that this was the right decision on his part, since he acts with the calculation. Having a little estimate how the situation could turn out, Mason waved his hand and led his team further to the 5-2 section. William, in turn, successfully reached the 5-3 zone and stood in front of the local boss, a huge and merciless sickle. Standing in front of him, he did not even know where to start, so he decided to begin, and decency to say hello to such a huge monster. Still not moving, William added that he had long wanted to fight him, and Serpent was already beginning to show aggression. Ignoring his sharp movements, William closed his eyes and began to concentrate in order to defeat him faster. Having stood a little more, William opened his eyes, stood in a defensive rack, taking a comfortable weapon, and shouted to the Serpent to attack. Serpent did not force himself to wait for a long time and, first hissing on the entire space of the dungeon, rushed into the attack on William. William deftly dodged the first attack of Serpent, slipping on the floor under his huge body, easily reacting to the attack. Finding himself under his head, William again decided to use his technique, so he gathered all his strength in his hand with a spear. As soon as he felt that it was time, he cut the sickle right down his neck with a spear, forcing him to loudly hiss from pain to the whole dungeon. William tightly held a spear in his hands and did not let him out of his hands, clearly realizing that he had won in this battle. After some time, his whole team reached the dungeon, where William, apparently, was tired of waiting for them. They stood and silently looked at him, while William told them that he thought that they would need more time for cleaning. William himself was sitting on the body of a defeated sickle, so that the stupor and the silence of his team could be understood. William realized that the more monsters you kill, the stronger you become, and you can only see the changes after the round. It was the awareness of this fact that has motivated William to give everything else to his team and to do others himself. He turned to Mason and Marie and said that they were heading after him, to which they nodded in the affirmative. Once again, looking at them carefully, William said that he has just a magnificent plan, and a smile lit his face. Leaving the destruction of small monsters on other fighters, the three main players of the Nadezhda team went to hunt for the team of love. William flew forward and thought that he could defeat the serpent from almost one blow, which was a strong result. He also kept in his head the fact that, thanks to the murder of monsters, he could increase his strength in battle. The main problem was that its current aura was at too low, which did not suit William extremely. Mason was distracted from his thoughts, who said that they would soon go to the love team, so why William has no plan? William replied that he saw in their team a boy who looked like Charlotte. He was also strong physically, but clearly not mental. He added that he did not know if he would be among the players present on whom they go out, but in extreme cases he will come up with something. The captain of the love team announced that they would share. 6 people will go to the 11th sector, and 5 will go to the 9th. After they finally finished cleaning the current sector, they followed the order of the captain and quickly divided. While they calmly cleaned their sector, Thomas again inaccurately addressed force, since his thoughts were again scored not by the game. He made sure that thanks to the glasses for hunting, his aura is already yellow, which means that he could definitely resist William. Thomas was so immersed in his thoughts about the fight with William that he had already ignored the orders of the captain of his team. He once again checked his aura, deciding for himself that with such an aura he would easily crush him, and his tank barely managed to protect him from a spear. The spear bounced from the shield and still hit Thomas a little, which is why he fell into a stupor, as he did not feel William at all. Having recovered from the first shock, they scored alarm that they were attacked by another team. The second part of their detachment already wanted to stop the cleansing and go to their aid, but the second part of the Hope team came to them. Charlie was at the head of the coming detachment, and their task was, if not eliminated, then at least detain this part of the love team. Charlie stood and slightly nervous, as he first led the detachment and never acted as a leader before, but it was too late to retreat. He remembered how William told them about this plan, that after the victory over the serpent, they should help them with an attack on the love team. At that time, William noticed that they are a national team, so it will not be easy, but they will be able to kill them all to one. Remembering these words, Charlie stood, holding in his head another phrase of William that when they finish, they would come and help them. At this time, William jokingly wondered how they could block such a strong spear throw, but Mason did not understand the joke and objected. Stretching, William prepared to throw. Mason climbed onto the shield of the enemies and quickly deal with them. Having concentrated, he made a jerk, launched Mason into the air towards the grouping detachment of the love team. After he launched Mason to them, he decided to throw a spear to them in addition. But this time, the throw will not be weak. Having concentrated again, William threw his spear with catastrophic power, which flew faster than the bullet towards the opposite team. Having barely tracked the trajectory of throws, the love team considered that they chose Thomas's main goal, given the conversation before the game. Thomas himself continued to stand in a stupor, unable to move, and looked at how Mason was rapidly approaching him. Suddenly, at the very last moment, Mason applied his teleportation ability and attacked the tank closest to it. The second, which stood behind him, was still shocked, but found the strength to make an uncertain swing. Mason, in turn, barely managed to react so that he would not be demolished previously with a spear of William, which came perfectly in the second tank. While he was sitting, the remaining members of the enemy team said that it was necessary to defeat him before his teleport was reloaded. Suddenly, Marie also took part in battle, jumping high into the air and wrapping Mason's body with a whip to pull it out. She smiled cheerfully, because for the first time she participated in the battle with relatives and can provide them with real help. She jerked the whip and dragged Mason away from the enemy team so that he could calmly and safely go aside. Mason, thanks to the help of Marie, calmly reached William and used a teleportation to Marie to transfer her to them. William scanned at Mason, calling him an old man, to which he reacted as violently as his breathing allowed. William only laughed in response and stated the fact that they successfully dealt with the tanks. If the 3 of them remained against the 3, then there is only an option to arrange a duel 3x3 between the remaining players. Thomas and his team stood in shock, Looking at how confidently William and his partners figured out 3 members of the love team, William continued to joyfully and solemnly declare plans for further actions, saying that they would be divided into pairs. Thomas looked at his decisive actions very scared because he did not expect that they would attack so suddenly and successfully. The situation in turn was quite happy with commentators, as they can see a duel between one of the strongest players. They admired the magnificent solution that William's detachment pretended to attack Thomas, but attacked all the tanks. Commentators also noticed how amazing how elegantly William controls its impact and speed. Having a little more discussing William's actions, they decided to switch to the actions of the match that was currently coming at the moment. Thomas still stood in a stupor and looked at how William's partners quickly ran past him and attacked his team members. His partners rained down like Mason and Marie's sharp and strong attacks, so he remained one of the detachment. It depends on how quickly his teammates lost his team. He said that this was impossible. But William was already approaching otherwise. After he told Thomas that there was nothing impossible here, he delivered a crushing blow to him with a shield, sending him away from the game. While Thomas flew into the ground from the blow, William shouted to him that he should finally stop whining, otherwise this was bored. Also, William was still looking at how Avatar Thomas leaves the battlefield. With anger, nevertheless called him a stupid major. While William and his detachment slowly dealt with Thomas, the detachment Charlie was surprised to listen to the murder announcement. The one who controlled the detachment that Charlie faced was indignant at the fact that they managed to lay so many of their players. Without thinking twice, he rushed into battle, urging the others to follow his example, because if they win now, then the victory will be behind them. He chose Charlie with his goal, as the new position of this player outraged and insulted him, the tank. Charlie, standing in front of the player attacking him, recalled William's instruction on how to handle the shield and sword correctly. When he was finally attacked, he remembered that the first step was to defend from the blow, and then the counterattack followed. When he realized that he had successfully blocked the blows of the player attacking him, he removed the shield and attacked him with a sword in the second hand. The player, whose attacks he successfully repulsed, stood and looked at him indignantly, not understanding where he got such good defense skills. He also added that Charlie did not even have the slightest idea of how to tank correctly, and attacked him again. After this attack, Charlie realized that he should act faster, and stumbled, but the announcer announced that William was gaining a third murder. William managed to arrive and help him as promised, adding that Charlie is well done, but the rest should be left to them. He smiled in the face of the remaining detachment and said that in 5 minutes they would finish with them and move on to the next stage. After the end of the game, commentators announced that Mason was the best player in this round. In a room specially allocated for the team, the whole team congratulated Mason on his achievement after a long break. Listening to delighted exclamations, Mason thought that it was not easy to return at his age, but these feelings were worth it. Turning to William, who silently sat on the side, Mason thought that this all happened only thanks to him. Seeing his views directed in his direction, William did not pay attention to them, as he was busy with another matter. In the series, which he watched with such zeal, there was a decisive moment that left him in shock. Commentators announced that the second round would begin soon, and they will declare a new location, a complex dungeon with altered gravity. The Maze of Death is a dungeon in which the rooms of the stairs are intertwined in front and behind, and gravity presses on players with tenfold force. They also clarified that William previously cleared this dungeon, but a lot of supermen died here. In the end, the commentators added that it would be very interesting to see the first liquidator again in action. After Thomas looked angrily at William again, he went forward with his thoughts about why, after awakening, so many idiots surround him. He began to sort through his head a list of those idiots that James Waker met earlier, as well as the cult, which he investigated by heels. William also noted that in addition to the sect and James Waker, he was surrounded by such idiots like Thomas. When he sat in his place, he threw back the thoughts of these idiots and said that he decided to show them a real game. Putting on the helmet, William was already ready and anticipated the battle that would now show everyone in this dungeon. Also, when he connected to the game, he added that even though this battle would be magnificent, but much worse than they could imagine. When the whole team loaded into the death maze, Mason decided to conduct a short interview before the game. Mason has already begun to speak his speech, starting with the fact that the Labyrinth of Death is a very complex location. But William interrupted him. When Mason asked William what was the matter, William answered him that he would go forward himself, and then they would catch up with him. After this phrase, Mason asked William whether he remembered how the labyrinth was arranged since the raid, to which he received a positive answer. While Mason once again recalled that only 17 years had passed for William, He asked him, did not change the dungeon in the game. Mason answered William to his question, saying that the dungeons were not changed, and he can go. Only let not make stupid things. He jokingly calling Mason the grandfathers. William said that everything would be in order since he promised the show, and they should only wait. At approximately remembering the layout of the dungeon, he realized where the love team is now starting, and with all his might pulled in that direction. Marie asked Mason if he was sure that William could be released at the moment against the whole enemy's team. Mason assured her that let William look like a loafer, but he has a tremendous combat experience and he responsibly approaches the assignment and he has a plan. Having said the last phrase, he remembered the character of William and once again prayed to someone that William still had a plan this time. While he was standing and worried about the presence of a plan, William in turn dissected the dungeon at great speed. Monsters and main opponents of both teams in this location were skeletons, decorated in the style of mummies from old tombs. Stopping in front of the first heap of such monsters, he smiled, seeing that everything was the same as at the time when he defended this dungeon. Having looked at these monsters a little more, William rushed in their direction, joyfully shouting that he had not seen them for a long time. William moved between the groups of monsters very quickly, leaving not a single living behind their backs. His spear very quickly dissected the space of this dungeon, and even altered gravity could not slow down its blows. The shield also did not lie idle and served him with a very good tool in order to break through the crowds of enemies. He used his shield in order to break through the crowd of monsters and then scatter them all in different directions. Before the way that he chose, 2 skeletons became his last obstacle, with which he also easily dealt with. Having jumped into a huge hole, he thought that if a year passed for him, then the rest had been 18 years from the moment of stripping of this dungeon. William once again became convinced that gravity was still increased 10 times, and it would be difficult for a beginner to get used to it. Falling down, William calculated the distance and threw the spear so that later he would catch on and avoid falling. He also noted that if you know this dungeon very well and got used to gravity, you can shorten your way. Thanks to the abbreviated path, he literally in a couple of minutes reached the place where the love team was. Seeing William, they were in a stupor, since at first even 10 minutes did not pass, and he already found them. Seeing surprise on their faces, William explained to them that even in the first round he realized how they would act in the second. Having told them about this, he turned to them and said that they were already dead, since he read their actions. The captain of the love team left the stupor and ordered everyone to get together to attack William right now. He also added that William clearly could not come here alone, so they should divide into groups, surround him, and attack. Looking at their fussy actions, William thought that they were clearly in a hurry with conclusions, because he is really alone. He also noted that the regrouping in this situation was a good solution, but in any case, it will overdo them all. Having decided to play with them a little, he activated his ability to analyze the view to appreciate the enemy forces. He began to sort through the ability of players from the enemy team, but could not find the right one. At one point, he nevertheless found the player suitable for him and instantly killed him with a spear throw. While the whole team looked at the flying ally in shock, the announcer, against the background, announced that William had already earned 1 murder. William, in turn, looked cheerfully at their surprise, mocking, because the player would never have survived before his blow, since he has low dexterity. William regretted that he had spent 1 spear, but decided that he had enough of the remaining 3, and began to look for the enemy's team with his eyes. Not finding them eyes, William realized that they were hiding and realized that he would still have to go upstairs. While he was going upstairs, the enemy's retreating team was gathering at one point for discussing tactics. The team, along with the captain, was surprised how he found them so quickly, because it destroys absolutely all their plans for this game. When the captain was told that he was alone, the captain objected that his partners were perhaps hiding somewhere nearby, and this is such a plan, to distract them and attack. Commentators discussed the fact that after such active movements, William froze in one place and does not move. William understood that given their speed and time to escape, they probably just hid somewhere. He with his eyes found for himself a point at which he would beat, but noticed that the chances are 50 by 50. Although you can't check it yet. You won't know. Having stood a little more and calculated the distance, William waved a spear, filling it with his aura for throwing. Having shouted into the void that love should return, William threw his spear to a previously selected point with all his strength. The love team was able to notice a spear flying in their direction in the form of a small flash just before the approach. While they were surprised to look at how their ally pierced the spear, William was happy that he correctly calculated their position. The captain and other members of the love team stood and looked at the spear, not understanding how William was able to find and get them. Commentators also sat in a state of shock and small in a stupor from how exactly William could calculate the location and get. After the announcer, against the background, voiced that William had already scored a second murder, William was pleased that he had guessed the enemy's position. William also added that they already mentioned that on this day, everyone was waiting for the most exciting match in the history of the Korean Battle of Super Number. While the commentators praised William, the love team was still in the middle of the site and looked at the place where their ally was previously. Thomas immediately lost his temper, saying that it was necessary to attack right away, and he could defeat one. But what will happen if two were attacking him at once? While Thomas continued to hysteria, the captain asked him to calm down, saying that he continued to track them up while they were standing still. He also added that they could be divided in intelligence, but for them it will be too few that Thomas was again indignant. While they stood and argued, William had already approached them and watched how they quarrels among themselves. Thomas was able to notice the presence of William, but did not give in mind, saying that he hates his entire team, and he himself could deal with William. When the captain objected to him again, saying that he should take care of the aura, and then unite and attack everyone at once, he again became furious. Thomas said that in this team everything forbid him everything, and he was tired of it, so he himself will deal with William, and threw a fireball into him. Thomas stood and with pleasure looked at the place where William stood before. A huge flame was blazing. He stood and mocked William, saying that he was not the most intelligent, and he read him, having sucked him that he would appear behind him. Suddenly, William's voice interrupted Thomas's ridicule, forcing him to be shocked by the fact that William had experienced his attack on him. William asked Thomas if he believed that he himself disarmed him, because if he really wanted to hide, then he would never have noticed him. Having told Thomas a few more offensive remarks, William suddenly disappeared, and the love team lost him from its field of vision. Thomas still stood in a stupor from the fact that William was so earnest to block his blow, without even dodging him. The captain noticed that the power and aura Thomas is at a high level even for the Premier League, so they placed him in the position of the main player of the inflicting damage. He told Thomas that he should catch William, so they will be divided into two groups, from which one will hunt monsters. He said that the second group would pretend that they were going north, and when he followed them, they would kill him. The captain also added that, due to the glasses scored for hunting the second detachment, they will probably be able to lay William. Commentators noticed that the love team began to hunt William, but it is unlikely that it would give them as simply as they think. They added that they think so only for the reason that only the main of the seven saviors knows the death maze best. William at that time stood and watched them from the shelter, but remained disappointed with the speed of which they made decisions and attacked them. Commentators did not have time to comment on William's actions and shouted that he noticed a love team and was preparing to attack 3 fighters. William landed right in the center of a small group of 3 people so that they all scattered in different directions. Looking around, William smiled and said that they came up well, but their plan was still very far from ideal. Cutting the space next to all 3, he noticed that all 3 were the main players who caused damage. Looking at them again, William asked them if they are weak as the rest of the love team or not. Having not received any answer to his questions, William decided to get down to business and swung over one of them. The player he swung over did not manage to react to his movement in any way, and soon the announcer, against the background, announced that William was already gaining the 3rd murder. After William removed the 3rd player on his way, he looked around to choose the next goal for the attack. Having prepared his meter throw technique, he pierced another player, after which the announcer, against the background, announced the 4th murder. After the 4th murder, William turned to the last player from the 3, which he attacked, and said that now his turn had come. Hearing that now it was his turn to get out of the game, the player did not want this, and in fear began to back away. He tried to escape from William, but the spear that he threw after him caught up with him, and the announcer, against the background, announced the 5th murder. While the announcer continued to repeat the number of killings of William, he considered that there were only 6 people from the love team. The fact that he so easily interrupted 5 people from the love team, literally half, gave him the motivation to kill the rest. The audience, who at that moment sat in the stands and watched the match, could not believe that he was their compatriot because of his strength. Everyone sat in shock, including James Waker and those who came here in order to get William to their team. Commentators noticed that many players are worried, and with excitement are waiting for the results of the confrontation between William and professional players. Such a phrase also sounded that it would be interesting to know what result would be in the match between William and James Waker. Charlotte sat in shock and watched how strong William turned out to be a player and realized that he really returned. Mason contacted William and asked when he managed to lay 5 people, and he replied that he did not like something. He also asked William where he was, because most likely they will soon finish and be able to join him. William said that this information is unlikely to be needed, since while they come, he will finish, and finished the connection. He moved very quickly between the dungeons and literally instantly faced the last detachment of the love team. He asked if they were waiting for him, and also said that he promised to come early, and he fulfilled his promise. The captain of the love team gave the command to gather and ordered everyone to work according to a previously developed plan. When they began to regroup, William was surprised that they were prepared quite well for meeting him. After a few moments, William was surrounded by 3 groups of 2 people, the result of the separation of the last detachment. William grinned at their tactics and thought that most likely they would attack him with the whole crowd, trying to extinguish him. After he understood their simple strategy, he decided for himself that no matter how hard they tried, he would deal with everyone, starting with the nearest one. Suddenly, his enemy accelerated sharply and struck, which was quite unexpected for William until he saw his ability. Despite the surprise, William was able to block the blow, noting that his ability is pretty good. William noted that this is his only opponent who can accelerate so much, but does not understand why he is so bad. Having struck him, William was pleasantly surprised that he was able to dodge his first attack, which was quite fast. William also added that despite the fact that he is fast, he still cannot avoid defeat, since he does not calculate the actions in advance. William struck him and sent him into flight, while the announcer, against the background, announced the 6th murder committed by William. The player of the love team scaredly turned to Thomas and ordered him to use his fire explosion to stop William. Thomas did not begin to resent in any way, but only used his ability, throwing several fireballs in William. Running out of smoke, the player of the love team shouted Thomas so that he helped him find William since he was nowhere to be seen. Not finding William anywhere, this player screamed with powerlessness and ran into the smoke created from Thomas's fireballs. After he ran into smoke, silence reigned on the site, since absolutely nothing was heard, neither the player nor William. After a few moments, the smoke dispelled, and the body of the already murdered player flew out of there, illuminating the flash of the silhouette of William. While the announcer was already announced the 7th murder of William, the team captain and Thomas stood and could not believe his eyes. William only stood and looked at them, making it clear that he would not give any mercy in this game to any of them. While they stood and continued to look at how he easily scatters all members of their team, he managed to earn 2 more murders. After he finished dealing with the rest of the love team, only 2 remained, Captain and Thomas. William turned to them and cheerfully asked a rhetorical question. Are they going to attack 2 per 1? They did not answer his question in any way, since they were shocked by the fact that even in the match against the French the situation was not so deplorable. While they stood and could not understand what to do, William analyzed their ability to analyze the view with his ability. He noticed that the captain had good characteristics, but he have been so for the reason that many people have a much larger aura than him. The captain had already ended with strategies with which he could defeat William, so he turned to Thomas for advice. William was outraged that the captain showed such disrespect to him, turning his back to him and cut him with one wave. Thomas stood in a stupor next to the place where his captain used to be, while the announcer, against the background, announced the 10th murder. Thomas continued to stand in a stupor, while William, mocking, turned to him, continuing to humiliate him with every phrase. When Thomas again found the ability to move, he began to back, counting on some unknown forces and salvation. While he continued to pray to William to stop, he had already swung a shield over his head and invited him to die. Thomas's face lost its natural form from the power of the blow that William put in this swing with his shield. The remains of Thomas's body perfectly adorned the wall of the dungeon after the outburst of William, while the announcer, against the background, announced the 11th murder. Commentators could not believe their eyes, since just for the first time in the history of the Battle of Superhumans, the team was destroyed by 1 player. The reaction of the affected spectators immediately began to break all the social networks, since everyone was delighted with what result was shown. Also, while William and the rest of his team walked near the stands, commentators said that the words that William needed time to adapt is stupidity. While he and Mason walked past the stands, William drew attention to the drone, which all this time flew above them, and asked what it was. Mason explained to William that this was a camera, thanks to which you can shoot a scene from different angles at any height. As soon as William heard that this camera passes the image on a large screen on the air, He immediately showed the middle finger in it. Mason immediately attacked him and tried to make him give up, but William told him that it was just very fun. Mason silently dragged him along, and when William asked him where he was dragging him, he replied that they were going to give interviews. When they went to the stands, the presenter was already waiting for them there, and when they approached, she introduced herself. Mason also introduced himself to her in response, as a player of the team of Hope, and William only nodded because everyone already knows him. The reporter said that they showed an incredible game, and at first she would ask him a few questions about the game. When she asked if they guessed that everything would end so quickly, Mason replied that they could not even suggest. He said that during the match he simply decided to completely trust the skills of William, which had its fruits. After he answered a few more questions, the reporter switched to William, saying that there were also several questions to him. She said that in the first round he surprised everyone, but in the second he shocked everyone. And could he believe that he could do all one? William replied that by itself because in the first round he took a weapon, and excitement woke up in him, and in the second he enjoyed all. After this question, William thought and began to sort through all the mistakes that the love team made in his head. Having decided to pin Mason, he said that they have problems in a coach who does not see the potential of their abilities and cannot set up a position. When the reporter asked to say something for the players, William replied that while their skills are at the bottom, then you cannot wait for the results either. But he also added that in our time, everything can be achieved with the help of money, hinting that he should be hired in the role of a coach for money. When William and Mason were already sitting and driving in a car, William asked why they were going home, not home, but somewhere to another place. When Mason answered him that they were going to celebrate, William was indignant, since he plans to watch the next series in the plans today. Mason answered him that he could watch the series on the internet, but today they have a holiday, so he needs to be present. He also asked William why he said about changes, because he was not interested in the battle, so the meaning of the phrase was incomprehensible. William replied that he simply gave advice, and then was indignant at how such players could put on such absurd positions, and where the coach was looking. In response to this, Mason answered him that he should look at himself, because after the salvation of humanity, he signed up for the coaches. He also remembered that despite everything, one of the seven savior heeded the advice of William and became an excellent coach. When William said that in this country they simply do not understand how to teach, Mason invited him to begin to teach others. William answered him that even though he did it for free today, then in the next times it will be if only he is paid for it. When Mason was indignant, William thought a little and offered not money for coaching, but a small service from him. The first condition of William was that Charlie must be put on the main position of the tank, as it would be fair. He also added that the player against him poorly controlled his speed, so that it should be used as an element of surprise. And then William voiced his last condition. He asked Mason to remove Thomas from the team forever. Mason specifically did not agree with William's last condition and said that he could not just drive him out. When William asked if he was afraid of the deputy president, Mason was indignant and recalled that he was one of the seven savior. He said that in Korea there are simply very few outstanding supernomings, and Thomas is just the one who is one of these. When he said that he had a strong aura, William answered him that he had very little willpower, and this was the main reason for their defeat. When Mason tried to object, William put a point in the conversation, saying that at first there was a mental force, then physical. After that, William put an end to, saying that this was his final decision, and he would need to be transferred to the deputy. Soon they drove up to a huge and sparkling hotel, inside of which a huge number of people were already. Marie, as soon as she saw that they had arrived, immediately began to run to them from the other end of the hall with a happy smile on the whole face. When she ran up, she said that there was just an incredible bar with very tasty vodka, which very much surprised William. While Mason annoyedly headed for the chairman, Marie argued with William you can drink vodka or not. As a result, she was able to break William. But when he loudly said that it was time to get drunk, the reporters immediately noticed him. They began to whisper among themselves, discussing the fact that they should chat with him and interview him. Oliver already wanted to go and start talking to William, but his companion stopped him from this decision, saying that there were too many reporters. She also added that he is unlikely to agree to immediately sign a contract, and they need to be careful. But while they had a different one, another approached him. Those who were ahead of Oliver turned out to be Jake. He went to William and immediately turned his attention to himself. When he came up, William was surprised that he arrived here and now wants to talk with him. While they stood and discussed various topics, Oliver stood aside and was angry that Jake was able to get ahead of him. After thinking a little and examining this situation, Oliver realized that Jake could not take William to himself in any case. Oliver took into account the fact that William is not like other players, and if he cannot understand William's feelings, then Jake could not. Jake at that moment was already finishing his conversation with William and in the end, extended his business card under the pretext that he called him. Marie was surprised that William knows English because from the age of 13 he only did that he was running along various dungeons. When she said that she thought that they both did not know English, William began to laugh at her, calling her a stupid baby. When Oliver was finally convinced that Jake had gone from William, he already decided for himself that he would talk to him and headed in his direction. Oliver had already headed in his direction and even called out William, but he was again ahead of him. This time, two brothers who were in charge of the club. They joyfully ran to William and asked if they could have a conversation between them in English. When William sighed, tired, and answered them that he also knew French very well, they were delighted with this fact. When he asked if they were the owners of some club, then Marie explained to him that they were the owners of the best club in the world. She also said that Mike Bernard is also a member of their club, and by the way, he includes 3 players in the world. When William realized what was happening, he asked two brothers whether they were going to invite him to their club once came to him. When they said that they were not going to invite William to their club, he was surprised, and they explained that they knew that he would refuse. They said that this, of course, would be a great honor if he entered their club. But they came here only for Marie. William was delighted that they were not going to invite him to their club and asked Marie whether she was going to join their club. She immediately began to rejoice and thank them in several languages, so William asked her to calm down. Just in case, William asked them whether they came to pick up only her, not him, but they said that they would not lie to the hero. They said that they were not interested in the role of support. But she was able to reveal her talent when she took the position of the chief player causing damage. They also added that they think that Marie will be a great addition to the team after several training. Just in case, they also mentioned that if William also goes to them, then everything will be just great and a dream team will turn out. William did not upset them and said that he would think about their proposal, in response to which they promised him the best contract. When he was surprised that they had so thick wallets, they answered him that there was no reason not to spend money on such a player. They also clarified that they were his long-standing fans and want to give him a weapon, and whether he was against it, but William did not refuse. They thanked him for agreeing to talk to them and think about their proposal, and did not dare to distract him anymore. They ran away as quickly as they came running, and after their departure, William noted that they were still devils. William said that he was very tired of these conversations and would better go home. But Marie was very interested in what they told him. He did not pay attention to her and said that before going home they would drink a little, and Marie still tried to get the answer out of him. When William heard a voice behind his back, he reacted very irritatedly as he was very tired of conversations. He turned around, unculturally and rudely turning to the one who called him and asked who dared to distract him. The man that had distracted him introduced himself as a secretary of the Blue House, and William was surprised at what the Blue House wants from him. When he asked William whether he knew about the merit system, William specified that system that should provide supermen after the end of the war. When he said that this was a complete crap, they answered him that this was not a deception, and since 17 years had passed, he was assigned the first level. When William asked what a joke, he answered him that he needed to pay everything for 17 years of his absence. After that, he made some calculations and announced to William that if you call specific numbers, then this is 2.5 billion out. After this conversation, William stood and scrolled this conversation in his head again, thinking about where to spend money. He also accounted for the money that James Walker listed him, and Marie asked him what he was doing. William again heard his steps behind his back and prepared for the next conversation, which really did not want to lead. The man who approached him introduced himself as Oliver Pellman. He was an agent of the Association of Super Highs from the United States. William quickly realized what all this was going on, and said that he did not want to work anywhere and would not accept any offers about this. Oliver tried to get out of the situation and said that he wanted to offer only one thing, and William needs to listen to him. He told him that he did not fully understand the new world for him, and at least once he saved it. But since then, it has passed as many as 17 years. After this phrase, he told William that in the future this issue could be resolved, and William asked him what he meant. He said that William will soon understand his place here, meet new people, determine the goals in life, will be able to become part of the new world. Oliver also added that he should not worry too much, and if everything happens according to him, he will be glad if he calls him. After he said goodbye to William, he asked his companion Lee said nonsense, and she answered him in places yes. Looking at the business card that Oliver gave him, William thought he was quite strange and a little stupid in appearance. Marie said that Oliver is one of the best agents in the United States who work with superhumans, and he is called a money ghost. After she told him that he had taken with him a lot of Korean superhumans, William said that there was not a single word about money. She also said that Oliver once made an offer to her dad, and there were a lot of money spinning there. Soon, the presenter announced the beginning of a charitable dinner in honor of the recent game. He also asked to introduce a person who was responsible for raising funds and donating the largest amount. After the host declared his name, William was in a little shock, as he himself did not expect to donate the most. Despite his surprise, the presenter stubbornly invited him to rise on stage in order to make a speech. William was not sure where to start, so he was determined for a long time with where to start the appeal and began to count how much money he had. The person who approached him recently today prompted him that he had more than $1.5 trillion. He also told William that he had already transferred all funds to personal accounts both to him and Mason, as promised. Being a little shocked by what he called the whole amount in front of everyone, William spoke slightly uncertainly. He explained his uncertainty by the fact that he heard only about the payment of $2.5 billion, and his joy is slightly amazing. He decided to dilute the situation by saying that he may rejoice for the reason that this money finally belongs to him. After that, he again took a small pause, thinking what to say before such a large number of people. He began by the fact that 17 years had passed since his victory, and during this time, while he was not alive, a lot has changed. He also said that everyone says that he saved the world, and many believe that he had committed a great sacrifice with his act. However, William said that he fought by no means for the general recognition or salvation of the world, but for the sake of fun. William also said that if they had not destroyed the evil completely, then he would like to continue to fight him by cleaning the dungeons. He also called this the reason for the lack of joy in those moments when everyone thanks him for salvation. That's what William was specifically proud of, this specifically in that children with whom he can help with this money have a chance to grow. He said that the possibility of these children to become worthy people for him is more expensive than the salvation of the world, and unhappy children will become less. When William descended from the leading stage, thanked him for his speech and already switched to the next stage. Going down from the stage, William heard a familiar voice, who said that in his speech he was very much bent. George asked William whether he was trying to compensate for his behavior with money, to which he replied that it was just such a life. George answered him that this was not an excuse, and he was simply born a problematic child. After William asked what he needed, George asked him if it was necessary to treat the national team so hard. He also added that it was just terrible to behave in a charity game, and now the higher league of the Korean battle has become a playground. When William asked what was the matter, George became furious and asked who the government considers superhumans monsters in human form. When William asked if all this was because of him, George confirmed his words, remembering him the situation with reporters. He also said that because of William, the reputation of all superhumans has deteriorated. But William said that everyone began the first. George calmed down a little and said that he came not only because of this, and there is another problem. William could join the national team as a coach. After George said that money too would not be a problem, William politely refused his offer. As a reason for his refusal, William said that he now had other things to have, in addition to training the Korean team. When they rode with Mason in the car, he asked William why he nevertheless refused George's offer. William replied that he now wants to independently become the owner of a separate club and train them. As the reason for this choice, he called the fact that he could not look at the Korean team without tears, so he himself will collect his team. When Mason told him that it would be necessary to pay more than $20 billion for this, William did everything. He also asked Mason if more money would spin when they moved to the second league, which caused his indignation. Mason was indignant and asked if he was doing all this only for the enrichment, to which William asked if it was all this time. After they arrived at Mason home and got out of the car, one woman attracted the attention of William. On the other end of the street, he saw a woman in a dark coat, which quickly and rapidly moved clearly in their direction. In this woman, he recognized Charlotte, the youngest of the seven savior, and the one with whom he clearly did not want to deal. Mason immediately teleported to Charlotte and asked what she was doing here, but she did not pay attention to him, answering that she had a business. William looked at her and did not understand what she was thinking about, although before her everything was written on her face and everything was obvious. With the help of an analyzing gaze, he decided to scan her abilities and noticed that she had a pretty good statistics. He also noticed that she had a new super vital called the location and was surprised that she became so strong. Without giving a look, he asked her what she was doing here and whether she wants to kill him. She replied that she had a thought about it, but he was immortal, so that she did not come for this, to which William reacted skeptically. He said that she did not go out to kill him, and whether she came here because of the old grievances and let her not forget that she was alive, only thanks to him. Charlotte replied that she had no offense against him, and he had already suffered enough for her life, as she thinks. William was surprised that she did not appear by his life, and asked what she needed then. Hearing in response that she only wanted to make sure that he really returned, he was surprised, since this is clearly not what he expected to hear. After she said that she was convinced, and saying goodbye, she left. He continued to stand in shock, not understanding what was happening. He continued to wonder why she came to him, even when she disappeared from his field of view, since it was not like her. Looking around, she looked at William for the last time and remembered how her activities were in the Seven Saviors. She remembered how William scolded her, reported, asking if she was ready to answer if everything falls apart because of her. She sat, cried, complained that she was tired, said that she wanted to go home and had enough of her. While she was sitting and whining, she did not notice how a huge monster crept up from behind and was ready to strike a mortal blow. Charlotte thought that she had to use a quenching beam, but obviously did not have time to apply it. She could not concentrate, so running away was already useless, so she simply accepted her death. When she closed her eyes a few moments later, she heard William's voice, who said she was not even capable of this. William held her in his arms and the defeated monster fell behind him at that moment while he was just looking at her. Charlotte was simply struck by William's beauty at that moment, while he was trying to achieve an answer from her to the question whether she had a celestial. It is for this reason that at that moment she fell in love with him, and she came that evening to make sure that he really returned. After William had checked his account the next day, he already immediately thought which club would buy him. Mason asked if he had already learned to use the internet bank and whether he wants to become the owner. William confirmed that he wants to become the owner, and says that he thinks that it will be fun and profitable. Mason also added that if he needs something, then he can help, and whether he needs help with the purchase of a club from the KB1 League. William asked what was the meaning of this if he has enough money, and what is it for KB1 League. Mason explained that 7 players play in KB7, and in the long run it is better to take KB7. William asked if there are no less players there, and Mason replied that it was easier to manage a family than 11, since it is much more complicated. After that, William said that he would just buy KB2 for himself right now, and Mason asked him if he wanted to read more about clubs. William turned with a joyful face to him and asked why he would read about them if he simply asks George. When William called George, the phone literally torn in his hands from the volume of his screams. When William asked him what options were, George explained that there are 3 teams that he could sell him in the future. When George said that he could take them at least now, William did not believe him at first, and then asked where to look at them. William went to the arena, where there was currently a match between the purchase team and the other team. Fans in the stands were not for the team that William was going to buy, and apparently they did it rightly. Many spectators looked doubtfully at William, who was wrapped in everything that could not be known to him. William did not pay attention to the fact that people would begin to sit down from him, because he followed the purchase team. When the teams that will play began to call, the team that is going to buy William was clearly not confident. He noticed that one of the guys had quite good characteristics, but he was some kind of too lethargic. After the audience shouted forward without stopping, forward, forward, William began to resent that they did not stop doing this. Then another guy attracted him from the purchase team, and he analyzed him with his ability analyzing gaze. William was surprised how he was put on the position of support player in his physical data. Looking at his superpower, who allowed to put a protective barrier, he thought that it was most likely because of her. But then he looked at his indicators and noted that because of their high edge, he could become a good player to damage. He obviously did not think that he would see something like that here, because he needed to simply train him correctly and you can go into battle. Then another player attracted his attention, whose strength and willpower were close to 90, which was high. Paying attention to his superpower, which made it possible to increase speed, strength, and dexterity, William noted that this could also be useful. Looking at the rest of the team, he realized that no one else stands out, and only these 2 can be used at least somehow. When he looked at the bench where the spare players were sitting and looking at the statistics, he was surprised how one of them was there at all. His attention was attracted by a red-haired girl who simply stood and was ill for her team, and her indicators were clearly higher than some of her team. Her strength reached the maximum, but dexterity and speed had very high indicators that almost reached their maximum. After that, William drew attention to her superpower, who allowed her to jump forward 20 meters and compared her with a flea. After that, he thought that this was not the worst ability, but in inept hands, this ability could even harm. After the match was over, William thought that he had not seen such losers for a long time. However, after thinking a little, he took off his glasses and thought that it would be even more interesting to train a team of such idiots. After the match, George called him and asked if he had already chosen the team, to which William replied that he was choosing lawmakers. 2 days later, the Association of the Battle of Supermanians Korea was sold to the Club of Lawmakers in William's hands. The former team owner wished William and said that he would believe in him and support him to the end. After buying this club, information about this scattered throughout the internet and filled all the news. In the comments, people were unhappy and asked why he simply did not become a player and did not think that the coach's work was suitable for him. After George congratulated William on the purchase, he said that it was ridiculous because he is also glad to shove this whole load on him. When the director said that he himself agreed, and this was not subject to return, William said that he was not going to refuse this work. George asked him if he came up with how to manage the team, and William replied that everything was as always, just to look at the players. And after that, the director of the tale that he finished with the projects, so he needs to leave, and then saw a new purchase of William. William said that now he will have to drive a lot to different places and does not want to pull Mason so that he would take him. Sitting on his new motorcycle, William also added that the owner of the club should be able to spend the right money, and he copes with this. William on his motorcycle could very quickly cross the city on Kenbu's highway. Many drivers were unhappy that he traveled along high-speed roads on a motorcycle so without a helmet. They were also indignant, calling him a goat or an idiot due to the fact that he still drove along high-speed roads on a motorcycle without a helmet. However, everything changed after the driver saw that it was William, so he did not wear a helmet, so that there were no complaints about him. When the drivers saw that while driving the motorcycle William, they decided that everything was in order, since he was immortal, and it is clear why he was traveling without a helmet. They also added that removing the helmet also allowed them to recognize him, and this suggests that he can make very correct decisions. When William came to the building of the Clubhouse of Lawmakers, he was not particularly delighted with what he saw. He noticed that the building is some kind of gray and dreary, and the situation here is generally the same dreary. Suddenly he heard a voice behind him, who told him that the entrance was forbidden here, and was surprised at such impudence. The one who turned to him apologized, because he did not recognize him, and did not think that he would drop so late, and introduced himself as a coach of the team of lawmakers. After analyzing his abilities, William realized that he would be a good support, but for some reason he was sitting on the role of a coach. To this decision, his statistics prompted him, as well as his 2 abilities, which allowed to restore life and inspire allies. William grinned and asked him how old he was, and he was surprised at this issue and replied that he was 43. William said that he was born 4 years earlier, and therefore 4 years older, and he did not understand what he said to. When he asked William what was the matter, William replied that he, it turns out, was older, and he agreed with him. After that, William said that he would call him a brother, and he would call him the senior, and asked him to show him everything. His newly minted brotherly showed him the environment, but told in detail everything, including the dining room, office, gym, and hostel. When he said that the club has 14 players, William said that he did not understand why there are a lot, but at least there is equipment, albeit the old. The last thing that his new brother showed him was the training hall in which there were 11 modules. Looking around, William noted that it was pretty good and spacious, but the minus was that there were fewer modules than players. When he asked Brayton why it happened, he replied that the technique is very expensive, but they don't have much money. William noted that he did not like something in the club and there is something to work on, but he will cope, since the players are the main problem. Turning to his brother, he asked to show him the fighters right now, which he was very surprised at. Right. William said that he did not see the point of not rushing events, and therefore ordered him to call everyone who is currently in the hostel. Turning to those who came, he asked if they were aware that he was William, the new owner of this club. Mia, the girl he saw in reserve, answered him that she was very glad to meet him and introduced herself back. Saving for herself that she really looked something like a flea, William asked if she was training with a bow. After his question, she jumped aside in surprise and asked how he understood what he replied, that for him to determine such things is a trifle. After that, William said that she is unlikely to fit the position of a player who was damaged, to which she only sadly agreed with his words. He also noted that in terms of characteristics, she also had much standing out, but he decided for himself that he would act differently. When he told her that he would make her the main character of the team, she looked at him in surprise, not believing her ears. When she asked him what he had in mind, he told her that she would be their angel. This did not give any more information. He voiced to her that her new task was to morally destroy the enemy, imperceptibly depriving him of his mind. After a few more minutes of the conversation, he asked the question that no matter how much she trained, she has no improvements. She thought a little to this question and answered sadly that this was true, because whatever it may be, she was hopeless. William heard these words and joyfully said that it was, so she was dismissed and should leave the team. It turns out that it was all her thoughts, and she thought that if she was admitted in her weakness, then these thoughts would become a bitter reality. However, when she heard that William did not expel her, she was very surprised and at the same time rejoiced, not believing her ears. When she looked inquiringly at William, he told her that he had already said that she would become the main character of the team. When she asked if this was a joke, he said that he was seriously and she has a special talent, and this is visible. After that, she asked if he had in mind not shooting from a bow, and he answered her in a rude form that anyone was able to own ordinary onions. After that, he explained that he saw another talent in her, a talent for running, and she runs very well, which can be used very correctly. She was surprised that he chose this particular talent, since she did not suspect him, and he said that she needed to focus on this. He gave her an example that she would jump like a goat, shoot from a bow, and make a bustle, for example, finish monsters instead of opponents. He also added that thanks to her super cly, when the opponent begins to catch her, she will be able to use her skills in order to leave there. When she asked him if he meant that she would need to make a feint, he replied that it was. William also added that she would hold a position, and during the battle, it will not be left without attention, but it will not be possible to catch it. As a result, William said that her main task is to make another team normally sweat when they catch it. She uncertainly asked him that if she would do everything that way, then she could really take a leading position. When William replied that if she tried well, he may become a member of the national team, she was very delighted. Mia immediately rushed to him, asking if this was a joke, whether he was lying, and whether it was true, to which he gave her his consent. She immediately got up in her mood, sorting through her head that she would be in a leading position, as well as a member of the national team. She jumped around and very much thanked William and said that she would work hard, and he noticed that she was definitely a flea. When he called the next, he did not immediately go into the room, and this annoyed a little from the very beginning. The one who entered was introduced as Henry, and told William that he was playing on the position of support. William noted that he first sees such a wood among supermen, and there are only unique personalities here, when looking at which he would like to laugh. When Henry said that they told him that he called him, but did not specify on what issue, but that William said that he was no longer in support. After these words, Henry was very surprised and began to try to convince William that he had played his whole life in the position of support. William irritatedly answered him that he was not a support player now, but he again objected that he was, perhaps, some kind of mistake. Henry stood and thought what was happening. He suddenly called him and without warning removes from the position of what he wants from him. William at that moment looked at his characteristics in order to make sure that he is definitely suited for the position that he wants. When he told him that he will from now play in the position of a player who was damaged, then Henry literally fell into a stupor from what he heard. In response to his surprised look, William told him that he had a talent for owning weapons, and these are not just empty words. After the phrase spoken, Henry uncertainly asked William whether he ever watched how he was playing. William did not want to admit that he had chopped off during their match, and said that who would take a team at all without finding out everything about it. Henry told him that he had a low indicator of strength and dexterity, and William replied that it was because he was used to retreating and defending himself. When he asked if the support should behave so much, William exploded and ordered him to stop arguing, since he certainly does not know better. William noted that he could not stand support players, since 9 out of 10 such players usually do not fight, but simply stand behind. After that, William noted that 1 out of 10 is still not like that, and Henry is one way or another. He told him that he will have at least 2 superpowers, and when such players cover the rear, their potential is more and more revealed. He asked Henry whether he was superpowered by him, and he answered this, confirming William's words. William said that this is his first weapon, and the second he would give him independently in order to improve his skills. When Henry asked him if he was going to make him a support, which could not only stand behind but also fight, William finally exploded. He grabbed Henry by the collar and told him that he would be the main player to bring damage, who has over the super prets of the support, and he was just stupid. After that, William asked Henry why he clung to this support so much, and was he not afraid to just take weapons and go to battle in the forefront. He told him that he should not make such an approach the basis of everything, and if he wants to succeed, let him listen to what he tells him. After that, Henry asked if everything would work out if he followed the advice of William, and William replied that it was important how much effort he would make. After that, as a result, William asked if he wants to stay with the support or wants to change everything, but he can stay and everything will be lost. He asked him what he would choose as a result, and whether he likes to be just part of the team that takes the last place in the league, or Henry wants to take a step forward, change his life for the better, and take a new position for himself to improve his skills. After that, Henry thought a little, swallowed nervously, and shook his hand in William, saying that he would become the main player to bring damage. After William left the hostel, his brother asked him if he finished getting to know the players. William turned to him and asked if he could find another coach since they need a good swordsman. When William said that he needed a person who will teach Henry to handle a sword, the brother tried to object that he was in the position of support. When William said that he was now the main player who was damaged, the brother was shocked. And William said that for Mia, he also had to prepare everything. William added that children from the first group need to increase endurance, since he noticed that during the matches their opponents did something and pumped their own. After that, William asked if he could go, and having received a satisfactory answer, he went to the motorcycle. But then he remembered something else. He turned to his newly made brother and asked if they could change the name of the team, the owner of which he became. The next day, William sat and rackled his head over what to do next, because he completely did not understand which decisions to make. Mason came up and told him that he did not look very, and asked what happened, what William asked him to lag behind. Mason said that he was worried for the reason, because he doesn't even look at his dramas, and is it because of the lawmakers? Mason also said that William told him that there are 14 players, and whether he would expand the composition. Mason wanted to say a few more words, but William abruptly jumped up, which scared him a little. William silently headed for the exit, and when Mason asked him what he was going to do, he replied that he was going to conduct a set. Approaching the window and looking at the street, William said that he would have to arrange a casting of new participants. He also noted that a bunch of journalists under the windows can be very much to pick up with this task. He scored his new brother on the phone and said that he needed to help and he needs to update the team a little, which surprised him again. When he asked if William wants to change the composition seriously, William replied that yes, and whether he had any problems. After he told William that this would result in large cash expenses, William asked him to stop complaining. William was a little angry with the stupidity of his assistant, but as a result, they agreed on everything. William thought that it was necessary to somehow impress the new players, and told brother that the set in their club would be open for 3 days. When he asked if there would be 3 days, as they usually last a month, and William replied that there were enough 3 days, when he went outside and greeted the journalists, they looked in his direction in surprise, clearly not expecting him to see him here. They asked him whether he was ready to give them an interview if he went out, and he answered them that he was ready, but on one condition. He said that he would answer all the questions, subject to the condition that they will do some necessary service for him. After this phrase, one journalist from the crowd raised his hand and asked what William needed so that they could get answers. William told them that within 3 days, a set of his team will be opened, and they need to post a message about this on the internet. After that, information about the recruitment of players into his club immediately scattered over the internet, and millions of applications immediately flew to him. The next day, the Brayton gained William and said that he was sent a lot of applications, and William asked if there were at least a few thousand there. He only replied to him that at the moment he had exceeded 70,000, and he does not understand where so much, but William told him to calm down. He told William that he was concerned because now is not even a season, but there are so many applications, but William asked him to remain calm. When he arrived at his main office, his brotherly poured a huge pack of paper on the table and said that this was all the resume of superhumans. William immediately began to review them and said that he would quickly rake, and after that he would immediately conduct an interview. All supernote after the awakening of strength undergoes a physical test in the association of their country in the same way as William passed it at one time. William sorted out all these resumes, indignant that everything here is some dead. Someone has not enough strength and still full of reasons. He was very annoyed by the fact that through paper he could not analyze them with his ability, analyzing the view, and understand the potential. After he was a little induced, he decided that still needed to review all the applications, and maybe there is something worthwhile. At one point, his gaze fell on the resume of a young guy named Lucas, who worked in the delivery service by courier. He noted that his strength and dexterity is barely 1.5 times more than that of the gold medalist of the Olympic Games, and it costs almost nothing. However, William noted that the superlace of this guy, visual telepathy, she can convey not only objects, but also show others what he sees himself. Realizing that this ability can be used very competently, he decided that this guy interested him and put his resume aside. On the same day, they interviewed, and their first client was a young guy who immediately said that he was a longtime fan of William. William turned to him and asked if he participated in the matches when he was a high school student, and he said that yes, but he soon stopped. William did not understand the meaning of his phrase and asked if he changed his mind right now, once he applied for joining the team. The guy began to make excuses and said that he simply really wanted to see William personally and ask for an autograph, that he was very angry. After William in a rough uniform began to expel him from the office, he asked why he was doing so cruelly with the fan. William was indignant and hit him, after which he added so that he would definitely tell everyone that William sent him and he was very cruel. After the Brayton, William asked him to restrain himself. He did not pay attention to him and asked to bring the next candidate into the office. After the guy was taken out of the office, the rest of the candidates stood in a little surprised that he came out of there in this form. The next one to the office was called a guy named Lucas, the one whose resume interested William earlier. He uncertainly entered the office and introduced himself to William and his brother sitting in front of him. The brother immediately began to review his resume and asked him why he came with such low indicators. When he turned to William to ask why he had come here at all, he saw that William was very interested in him and was surprised at this. William applied his ability, analyzing his eyes, and began to revise the guy's characteristics to make sure that he had not miscalculated anywhere. He also noticed that the guy had 3 superpower, which would bring very great benefits if he could open them. He also noticed that one of the superhell was a transmission of the aura, and it is very useful, a command superhell with great potential for use. He once again reviewed the resume to make sure that the guy did not know about this ability and whether he had indicated something else interesting. He asked Broughton whether Lucas was really born in 2000 seconds, and he replied that everything was right, and he and Mia are peers. After the Brayton told William this information, William looked at Lucas with interest and realized that it was fate. After a little thought, he turned to Lucas and turned his attention to himself, preparing to ask a few more questions. He asked Lucas if he had the experience of the battle in the battle, since he only indicated the delivery service, and he replied that he had no experience. After that, William asked why in this case he sent an application, because he had very low indicators, so he does not pull the role of the player. Lucas said that he knows this perfectly and understands everything, but since childhood, his dream was to get into the battle as a player, and this is his chance. He also added that others may see him just so weak and worthless, but in the submission of this application he is absolutely serious and sure. William also said that there are several more things that interested him, and asked how far the Lucas telekinesis works. Lucas replied that this was about 2.5 kilometers, and he can use the aura to find out the approximate location. He also added that he could find another player within the range of aura, but he has to search manually, because this does not work on the autopilot. William grinned because he can use his ability to detect, and everything is much better than he expected. He said that he had finally found a nun with whom their angel of the team would work, and the brother did not understand what he was carrying at all. William once again asked the name of Lucas, and he repeated him, not realizing that he was now threatening. William withstood a dramatic pause, and after several seconds of silence joyfully declared Lucas that he was accepted into the team. After Lucas joyfully could not believe in his happiness, the brother downloaded from his place and asked William whether he said seriously. William explained to him that he would be a great partner for Mia, which the Brayton was even more surprised. William explained to him that the construction could not be unsuccessful and that the team's strategies will be built on the basis of the work of these two. That same evening, players and all other participants of the club Longers decided to note the formation of William by the owner. Everyone celebrated, drank, ate what they themselves prepared, and asked everyone to love and complain at this holiday. William noted that despite the concern, the atmosphere in the team is normal, and after that one of the players greeted him. Turning, he saw the player whom he celebrated at the match after Henry, and he introduced himself as the captain of this team. Having looked at him, William remembered that he had really seen him earlier at competitions, but he was not particularly interested in him. He was not interesting to him for the reason that this is a standard tact in which there is nothing special, but he is too good for such a team. He said that he wanted to thank William for investing in their team and doing everything in his power, so as not to disappoint him. He also asked William to take care of them, and said that he was hoping for mutual cooperation between them. When he left, William noted that he was open and sincere, so he is an ideal captain for the team. Turning back, he noticed that Mia and Lucas from the very beginning got along well with each other and had a pleasant conversation. After thinking a little, he called these two to him, after which they joyfully ran to him, waiting for what he would tell them. William announced to them that they were new members of the second group and they would participate in the battle as one, so he asked them to live together. He said that while the angel was extracting information and praying for the forgiveness of his soul, behind her back the whole party is played by a gray nun. After that, he added that Lucas would act as a nun, which again very much surprised both of them. Having finished telling, he said that they would discuss everything later, and now they should just relax and have fun. When they moved away from him in slight confusion, he was convinced and rejoiced that now the team was at least minimally equipped. The last thing he had left was to change the name of the club, which he did not like very much, and his hands scratched him to change it. Having thought a little more about the new name, William shouted to the entire site, calling for general attention to himself. As a new club name, he chose YSM, and under the name, they played their first match in 3 months. Commentators who commented on this game announced that today's game will become a test of their new strategy. William looked at his players and wished them to do everything that they did in training, and did not do anything superfluous. When he asked Lucas if he understood what to do, he asked William from Wilm if he was all fine, but he told him he was not steaming. William gathered everyone around him and announced that the day had come when they show everything they learned in 3 months of training and had fun from the heart. The first round of the match of the Battle of Super Management between the new William team and another team from Korea was successfully declared open. Mason's wife thanked him for inviting her to the first match of his new team. When she asked why Mason himself did not come, he said that he was just waiting for something and did not dare to come. When she asked if he was working with his guys according to a different method, William answered her that she could not even doubt it. He smiled and asked him to show her an incredibly exciting battle that he was personally. The dungeon of the first round was a canyon of the Bizard, a picturesque place, in the reality of which cannot be found. Earlier in training, Mia overcame 100 meters in 3 seconds and did not even dust out during this and did not knock her breath. William noted that she had an incredible talent for running, and Lucas also became much faster and more resilient than before. The runner told William that Mia was a real treasure in this regard, and he also heard that Lucas had no experience in the battle. William did not give in, saying that their progress is not very different, but in fact he simply understood this with the help of his ability. The coach told him that his instinct was striking, but this should be expected because it was William that at one time revealed Mason's talent. The coach also said that as soon as they work out the style of the game of Mia, they will get good results and will be able to bring it to a real game. For 40 days of training passed and 50 days were left before the competition, and Mia still continued to train hard. Her teammates were surprised at how she could be caught taking into account the fact that she moves so quickly and jumps so much. Watching the results of her training, William said that now they can definitely apply the deterrence strategy. When William asked the team his impressions, they answered him that the feeling that the capture speed is half as usual than usual. And after that, William asked what infuriated them the most. When I received in response that there was a great dynamics, he praised Mia. After he praised her, she answered him with a smile, but excitement reigned in her soul. She still considered their director the best person, because he said that he would make a heroine from a player who is not even in the team. She also remembered that he said that she could become a member of the national team if she trained, and it is difficult to believe in it. Mia also noticed that her nerves were already at the limit and whether she had done it well, but then a voice led her out of her thoughts. When the voice of the captain of her team led her out of her experiences, she jumped out of surprise and asked who called her. When the captain asked if she was worried, she immediately waved her hands and replied that not a bit was worried. He reassured her, saying that she did not have to pretend, and since this is her first game that she is nervous, this is absolutely normal. The players of the team standing behind him confirmed his words, and one said that when he first went on the field, he was even sick. As a result, the team captain said that she could be nervous as much as she wants, but she should not doubt her abilities at all. He also said that the leader of the Seven Savior himself believes in them, and she will become the best game thief in history. After his words, Mia stopped worried, inspired and confidently answered that everything would be so, and they could win. The captain said that they were a team that national heroes gathered and trained, so they should fight with dignity so as not to disgrace him. He raised his hand up and said that they would not do everything as they agreed, and the team supported him with joyful cries. When the players of the new team divided and began to move, the commentators suggested that this was a 4 or 4-3 strategy. After that, they noticed that one team of 3 people crosses the dungeons, ignoring the monsters. And this is restraining from the very beginning. This group of 3 quickly moved through the dungeon, ignoring the monsters and jumping from their native air objects to others. Suddenly, having reached a certain distance, they stopped immediately after such a rapid movement forward and began to wait for something. Lucas told them to wait a bit, picked up the stone from the ground and began to monitor the location of the enemy team with the help of telekinesis. He combined the ability of telekinesis with the transfer of the aura, which allowed him to act as a scout and calculate the location of the enemy. Having spent a stone between different air islands, he finally found the enemy's command, which moved in one of the sides of the dungeon. He said that all 4 move in one group and showed the direction in which they would need to move. Mia sat on the ground and prepared for a jump to instantly catch up with the enemy's team in a matter of seconds. Having pushed off the ground, she flew into the air, already until the next air island, which was at an altitude of tens of meters from them. She made incredible and beautiful air movements, jumping from one island to another, showing very high mobility skills. Finally, she was able to get to the enemy team and was a little shocked by the scale of the battle with the dragon that took place there. When she was convinced that the enemy team did not notice her, she transmitted the information to her team that she had reached the goal. Seeing that there are no strong players nearby and the dragon already has very little life, she prepared for a shot from a bow to finish off the dragon. The enemy's team still did not notice her and was preparing for the last blow that were going to inflict this dragon. The detachment commander ordered them not to relax and said that they had almost caught up with this dragon. They had to inflict only the last blow. Suddenly, the arrow of Mia cut out the air and finished off the dragon, not leaving the enemy team and the chance to gain experience from it. They were upset that they lost points for the monster, and they were annoyed by the fact that YSM was simply engaged in theft of other people's monsters. The team captain ordered one of the players to deal with Mia, and he headed in her direction at a great speed to eliminate her. Mia looked at how he was rapidly approaching her, and was a little not sure that she could dodge, but in the end, he gathered her strength. This player struck the place where Mia used to be, but she had already managed to move to a completely different place. He got angry, believing that she was mocking him, as she just jumped up and instantly turned out to be in another place. He tried to catch up with her several times, but she only mocked him and quickly moved from one place to another, leaving him a chance. This player was annoyed by the very fact that he could not catch up with her, and he was also very picked up by her mockery of him. The commentators noticed that Mia slightly rejoiced the players from the opposite team, moving so fast that the enemy does not have time behind her. The commentators also noticed that the supply of MII arrows is not endless, and sooner or later they would end. Mia turned to Lucas so that with the help of his strength, telekinesis would give her a new quiver with arrows. Lucas instantly applied its ability, and Mia in his hands turned out to be a completely new quiver with arrows, correcting the only drawback.